Imagine dedicating your entire life to hunting monsters and protecting the innocent, only to wake up one day enrolled in a school for bloodthirsty vampires. That's the reality for our white-haired hero, Novice. His whole life he was taught to follow three strict, unbreakable rules: protect the weak, maintain absolute honor, and serve with selfless humility. But those holy vows don't mean a thing here at the Vampire Academy. When his new instructor calls him up to the front of the class to demonstrate the most efficient way to drink human blood, Novice stares at his grinning, red-eyed classmates and wonders how he ended up in this nightmare. Just 6 months ago, things were completely different. Back then, Novice was a proud human adventurer and paladin, and during a dangerous forest raid, he stumbled upon a massive camp of ruthless bandits holding a group of merchants hostage. Saving the captives seemed impossible for a solo fighter, but our guy wasn't about to back down. Knowing the odds are stacked against him, Novice calls on his winged system companion, Chip. The little creature instantly triggers a massive acceleration buff, wrapping our hero in a surging aura of blue energy that pushes his physical limits past the breaking point. Moving faster than the eye can track, Novice launches himself straight into the enemy frontline. He tears through the bandit ranks with blinding speed and crushing strength, moving with such overwhelming power that the surviving enemies realize they aren't just fighting an ordinary adventurer. Novice cuts through the battlefield with a devastating wave of blue energy, finally cornering the bloodied bandit leader, Taxon. The scarred criminal goads our hero to finish the job and claim his prize, but Novice refuses to cross that line. He declares that the bounty is dead or alive, and he is taking Taxon in for unleashing terrifying monsters on innocent merchants. As the local guards round up the surviving bandits, Taxon laughs in Novice's face. He points out the hypocrisy of slaughtering monsters without hesitation while sparing human scum, warning our hero that his soft heart is going to get him killed. Novice's mutated companion, Chip, tries to comfort him while his armored ally, Park, steps in to shut down the bandits' mind games. Park reminds Novice that their code as paladins is absolute, and by keeping his hands clean and stopping the monsters, he saved countless innocent lives. The party returns to Mosswood Village, where the locals are already singing their praises. The villagers whisper that since Novice joined the guild, his flawless track record has kept his entire party alive, turning every monster he slaughters into a beacon of hope for humanity. But despite the hero worship, Novice can't shake his doubts, asking Park if their merciful way is truly right. Park insists the order would be proud, which triggers a memory for Novice of a time he saved a bloodied orphan and told the kid to pay him back by becoming an adventurer he could be proud of. Meanwhile, a stern, scarred man approaches the group, demanding to know which one of them is Park. Back in the day, the Adventurers Guild was built on a simple, noble foundation, protecting the weak from terrifying monsters. It was a fair trade, where the desperate cries of the innocent were answered in exchange for coin, but money always talks louder than loyalty. The reason he has the power to take down these threats is simple. Over time, monsters grew too strong for normal bounties, forcing the king to grant talented adventurers a mysterious power known as the System. As one of the strongest paladins sworn to uphold justice and humility, Novice was chosen to bear this heavy burden. Starting from rock bottom at level 1, our hero has been grinding relentlessly alongside his system companion, Chip. He's currently pushed his way to level 35, desperate to hit level 40 so the king will finally deploy him to the real front lines. Back at the Duskwatch Guild Hall, Novice doesn't even take a breather before marching straight to the quest board. He snatches up a missing persons case deep in a monster den, a quest that's been sitting untouched for weeks because it only pays a measly 5 silver coins. His veteran party member, Sly, argues that after a week in a monster den, the victim is definitely dead, but Novice refuses to walk away if there is even a fraction of a chance. Sly groans, wishing his friend cared more about cash, but Novice just smiles, claiming the real reward is doing the right thing. Another ally chimes in, revealing this will actually be his final quest since he has a baby on the way, dropping the ultimate adventure death flag. Novice offers to go alone to keep them safe, but guild rules require a 3-man squad. Grinning, Sly steps up, declaring that they're coming along because someone has to watch the back of the man the town calls the Protector. Grateful for everything Novice has done, the villagers promise to have his back if things ever go south. But our hero isn't one to sit still for long. When it's time to head out again, Novice tells Park to stay behind and guard the village, knowing his recent injuries would only slow them down. With their wounded friend safely benched, Novice and the rest of the trio hit the road. They soon meet a desperate farmer whose little brother vanished while chasing runaway cattle near the Chlorif Caves. The poor guy is terrified. The caves are crawling with monsters, and he knows he'd be slaughtered if he went looking himself. He begs the adventurers for help, admitting that even if his brother is dead, he just wants the body back for a proper burial. Sly points out the grim reality. After a whole week missing, the kid's chances of survival are practically zero. But Novice isn't about to abandon a grieving family. He makes the call, and the trio accepts the rescue quest, warning the farmer not to get his hopes up as they march toward the barren wastelands. But they aren't the only ones out in the rocky wilderness. From the shadows, a mysterious figure with glowing red eyes and a dark aura watches the adventurers march off, quietly wondering what business they have in such a desolate place. Novice Claire and Sly enter the dark, jagged maw of the Chlorif caves, immediately spotting fresh blood on the rocky floor. Strangely, the monster den is completely empty. Claire warns that some beasts lure their prey deep into the maze-like tunnels before striking, deciding to conserve her mana instead of casting a light spell. Novice agrees, ordering everyone to stick close together as they navigate the sprawling cavern. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind rips through the cavern, instantly snuffing out their torches. But the terrifying part isn't the sudden darkness, it's the fact that the breeze came from deeper inside the tunnel. Novice uses a system skill to summon a glowing orb of light, hoping to pierce the heavy darkness of the tunnel. But as the shadows recede, he catches a terrifying glimpse of a glowing red eye and a jagged claw reaching from the abyss. He rubs his eyes, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. Sly notices his panic and casually asks if he's seen a ghost, completely unaware of the danger looming right behind him. Novice's blood runs cold as a monstrous creature with long dark hair and piercing red eyes materializes from the dark. He screams a desperate warning, but the beast is already making its move. In a flash of brutal violence, the monster drives its claws straight through Sly's back, tearing his chest wide open. Novice watches in absolute horror as his friend is impaled, his mind racing to process the horrific, almost human-like features of their attacker. Coughing up blood, a dying Sly looks Novice dead in the eye and begs him to kill the bastard. As the creature finishes its gruesome work with a sinister smile, Novice's shock instantly boils over into pure, unadulterated rage. He immediately orders his teammates Stefan and Grant to circle up and watch their backs, knowing these creatures use the shadows to their advantage. The surviving adventurers stand back-to-back in the pitch-black cavern, gripping their weapons as the mist swirls around them. When the monster strikes again from the darkness, Novice doesn't hesitate. Swearing that he won't let another comrade die, he activates his level 2 Accelerate skill, his legs erupting with blue system energy as he blitzes forward to intercept the attack. The beast cackles and lunges with its razor-sharp claws, expecting an easy kill. But Novice flips the script, unleashing a massive, glowing blue wave from his blade that slices right through the creature's defenses, proving to his terrified team that this monster can bleed just like anything else. Deep inside the caves, the rescue mission instantly goes south. The party is ambushed in the pitch black, and panic sets in when they realize their scout Sly has already been taken out. Shadowy figures with glowing red eyes lunge from the darkness, forcing Novice to trigger his level 2 crescent block. He unleashes a massive wave of blue energy to push the ambushers back, giving his ally Park enough time to rally the terrified rookies behind their town hero. But fighting blind is a death sentence, so they order their young mage, Stefan, to cast an illumination spell. The blinding flash of light exposes the horrific truth of what they are actually up against. Novice instantly activates his level 3 Accelerate, closing the distance and striking one of the creatures down. But as he stands over the bleeding attacker, our hero freezes, because beneath the fangs and feral snarls, these monsters look exactly like humans. Park screams at Novice to snap out of it, knowing full well about the Paladin's strict no-kill rule for humans. He warns Novice that whatever these things are, they lost their humanity a long time ago, and vows to finish the job himself if our hero refuses. The clash resumes, and Novice is pushed to his absolute limit by their terrifying speed and strength, which outclasses any monster he has ever faced. But it is their eyes that chill him to the bone, swirling with a mindless, unnatural bloodlust. One of the feral humans triggers a devastating push skill, but Novice expertly sweeps the attack aside. Seeing the opening, Park charges in with his axe raised, ready to deliver the brutal killing blow that Novice refuses to make. But the rescue mission is a trap. Deep in the cavern, they are instantly ambushed by inhumanly fast enemies who are shocked that a mere paladin like Novice can actually keep up with their blinding speed. Realizing Novice is a threat, the ambushers pivot their strategy and target the weakest link first, their blue-haired mage, Stefan. Novice screams for his party member Grant to help as the enemy closes in. But they're too slow. An enemy lifts Stefan by the throat, annoyed by the glowing light of his staff, and brutally snaps the young mage's neck before Novice can even reach him. Tossing the broken staff aside like a toy, the monsters close in on the remaining survivors. Novice and Grant press back-to-back, and our hero desperately activates a level 3 holy barrier to shield them from the onslaught. The red-eyed leader just smirks at the flashy defense. With a single, devastating strike charged with dark crimson energy, he shatters the hexagonal shield like glass, plunging his attack straight through Grant's armor. The cavern erupts in a blinding flash of red and white light. The sheer force of the impact leaves Grant utterly crushed on the cavern floor, taking out another of Novice's comrades in the blink of an eye. Novice watches in absolute horror as the ruthless leader casually stomps his boot down on Grant's bloodied face. The sight of his slaughtered friends pushes our hero straight over the edge. Fueled by pure rage, Novice launches a desperate sneak attack from behind, his blade surging with blue aura, but the enemy easily catches the strike, mockingly calling Novice a vicious little monster. Novice screams that he will never be a monster like them, but the scarred leader just laughs, claiming the King System warriors are nothing but monsters themselves. Refusing to back down, Novice orders his companion Chip to unleash every ounce of their power. He doesn't care if this battle costs him his life. Flashing back to the bloody tragedies of his childhood, Novice remembers his vow to become strong so no one else would ever have to suffer the way he did. The enemy leader finds this surge of human willpower incredibly amusing and challenges Novice to show him his true strength. The two clash in a spectacular mid-air collision of red and blue energy, shaking the very foundations of the cave. As they lock blades, the red-eyed leader flashes a sinister, razor-sharp grin. Realizing just how much raw potential this paladin has, he decides Novice is far too valuable to just kill right here. The ambush in the pitch-black cave quickly turns into a total bloodbath. A sinister vampire with glowing red eyes tears through the party, easily overpowering Novice and leaving him screaming in agony. Laughing maniacally, the monster grabs our hero by the head, promising he won't die just yet, and sinks his razor-sharp fangs deep into his neck. As Novice collapses to the ground in a pool of his own blood, he's consumed by regret, hating himself for failing as a protector. He curses his own weakness for not even being able to take the monster down with him, while Chip desperately clings to his wounded friend, screaming for him to wake up before they're all slaughtered. Just as the vampire prepares to finish the job, a sudden explosion catches him completely off guard. Against all odds, Sly forces himself back to his feet, despite a gruesome, fatal wound tearing through his torso. With his dying breath, the brave adventurer throws himself at the enemy, sacrificing his own life to give Novice one last chance. Seeing his comrade fall reignites a furious fire inside Novice. He silently thanks Sly for reminding him that the fight isn't over, and drawing both of his swords, he channels every single drop of mana he has left. With a deafening roar, Novice unleashes a massive, crackling surge of blue lightning, generating a magical output so intense that the vampire can only stare in absolute disbelief. Cavern is engulfed in a blinding shockwave, sending debris flying in every direction. When the dust finally settles, a battered Novice rests against the rocks, assuring a terrified Chip that their desperate strike should have been enough to kill the beast. But suddenly a sharp pain shoots through Novice's neck, and as digital system patterns flash across his vision, his eye begins to glow a sinister red. The vampire's bite is taking hold. As Novice watches in horror, volatile red energy engulfs his system companion. Chip stammers that something is happening to him, right as a massive, corrupted warning screen flashes before them. The system has been fatally infected. Suddenly, Novice finds himself floating in a strange, hazy void. He calls out for his fallen teammate Sly, and to his relief, he spots his party standing in the distance. But as they turn around, relief shatters into pure horror. Their faces are mangled and dripping with blood, and they scream at him, demanding to know why their so-called protector let them die. The nightmare spirals out of control as a sea of dark, viscous blood rises to swallow our hero. Crushed by guilt, Novice breaks down, realizing that his strict moral code and his self-imposed rules held him back when his friends needed him most. Weeping tears of blood, he begs for it all to just be a bad dream. With a violent gasp, Novice snaps awake, but the waking world is no better. He's still sitting in the dust and rubble of the Chlorif caves, surrounded by the gruesome, blood-soaked aftermath of the monster's ambush. It wasn't a dream, the slaughter really happened. Wondering if he's losing his mind, Novice frantically calls out for his system companion, but the creature that answers him is completely unrecognizable. Chip has mutated into a sinister, winged little demon, casually floating over and asking Novice if he looks a little different. Novice is completely stunned by Chip's demonic new form. Since Chip is a unique system navigator, his appearance should never change, making Novice realize that the system itself might be compromised. His fears are confirmed when a glitchy red warning declares his system infected. Checking his stats, Novice is horrified to see his race listed as an error and his level completely reset to 1. But strangely, his base stats are insanely high for a beginner, with his sense alone sitting at a solid 10. Knowing a system reset should be impossible without the King's direct intervention, Novice pushes the mystery aside to focus on his fallen party. He and Chip spend hours scouring the cave for Sly and the others' bodies, but they find absolutely nothing. Holding on to a sliver of hope that his friends somehow escaped, Novice decides to head back to the village for help. On the way out, Novice asks Chip if any monster venom is capable of mutating a human, unable to shake the disturbing realization that the creatures in the cave looked exactly like people. Chip immediately starts panicking that he might be turning into a monster too, so Novice quickly drops the subject and blames it all on his own paranoia. But the nightmare is just beginning. As they finally step out of the dark cave into the morning light, the sun scorches Novice's skin like fire. The system hits him with a brutal new reality. Standing in direct sunlight will continuously drain his health and stats every single hour. They desperately sprint for the shade, and while his stats recover, his lost health doesn't come back. Then the system issues a horrifying new quest to restore his health. Consume human blood. It even promises bonus effects for drinking different blood types. Completely in denial, Novice tries to rationalize that the system is just glitching because he's wounded, and he stubbornly steps back into the sunlight, determined to reach the village and fix this broken system. Stumbling through the sunlit forest, Novice discovers a dead body lying near a rustic house. The scent of the fresh blood is overwhelmingly sweet to his vampire senses, and his broken system immediately issues a grim new quest: consume human blood. Driven by his unnatural hunger, he leans over the corpse, tempted to take just one little taste. But before he gives in, Novice violently slams his fist into the ground to snap himself out of it. Disgusted that he almost defiled a corpse, he tells his system companion, Chip, that they need to get far away from this place immediately. As they sprint through the trees, the direct sunlight starts burning Novice alive. The system relentlessly spams him with warnings, draining his health and alerting him that his bloodlust is skyrocketing while demanding he feed. Chip frantically checks on him, but Novice pushes through the agonizing pain, insisting he has a hunch there's a village nearby. Sure enough, they spot a settlement just ahead, but the moment they get close, Novice is hit by a terrifying sensory overload. He can literally smell the blood of every single person walking the streets. His vision swimming with red, he grips a wooden post to physically hold himself back. As his health continues to drop from the sunlight and starvation, Novice realizes with horror that he can't step foot inside the village, terrified of what his monstrous instincts might force him to do to the innocent people inside. Novice drops to his knees, screaming in agony as the system flashes a dire warning. His bloodlust is skyrocketing. His mind is flooded with dark, intrusive thoughts of feeding on innocent villagers, and he clutches his head in despair, terrified that this cursed existence is his new reality. But his screams echo too loudly through the forest, drawing out a massive, glowing-eyed level 5 boar. Chip yells a warning, and Novice realizes he's in deep trouble. He's heavily injured, bleeding out, and technically only level 1. The monstrous beast charges with enough force to shatter trees, but as Novice dives out of the way, he realizes something impossible. He just dodged a high-level monster's charge effortlessly, without even needing to activate his accelerate skill. Figuring he needs to create some distance to plan a strategy, Novice throws a desperate punch cloaked in a surging red aura. A massive shockwave rips through the forest, and before Novice can even think of his next move, Chip stammers that the fight is already over, as the system grants him 50 experience points for obliterating the beast in a single hit. Staring at his blood-soaked hands, Novice is completely stunned. A regular level 1 human shouldn't have this kind of raw, explosive power. Chip points out that since the sun went down, their injuries don't ache nearly as much, and Novice realizes the night itself is fueling his vampiric strength. But that power comes with a terrifying cost. Novice knows that if his HP hits 0, he won't just pass out. The system will completely hijack his body to hunt for blood. Desperate to silence the maddening voices in his head, he smears his fingers in the dead boar's blood and takes a taste, gagging as he realizes it lacks the potent draw of human remains. Beast's blood doesn't work. The system flashes again, draining his health down to a critical 5 points while his bloodlust violently spikes. Screaming for the system to get out of his head, Novice grips his hunting knife in absolute despair, realizing that despite his lifelong vow as a paladin to protect people, his monstrous instincts might soon force him to cross a line he can never uncross. Leading out and stumbling through the dark woods, Novice's vampiric instincts violently flare up. His eyes glow red as a terrifying realization hits him. If he's transforming into a monster, he needs to protect innocent people from himself. Just as that thought crosses his mind, he accidentally stumbles upon a lone woman standing in the forest. The dark entities in his mind instantly go berserk, screaming at him to tear into her and drink her blood. Novice fights back with everything he has, desperately trying to suppress the overwhelming rage and bloodlust. He screams internally at the voices, swearing that he won't let this monstrous side define who he is. He begs the woman to stay away, but she just sees a badly injured man and stubbornly reaches out to comfort him. That proximity is pure torture for our hero. His heightened vampire senses lock onto her pulse, and he can literally hear her heartbeat echoing in his skull and sense the exact flow of blood rushing through her veins. Ignoring his warnings, the woman pulls out an incredibly expensive healing potion and pours it directly over his wounds. But since Novice is a vampire, standard healing magic burns him like acid, prompting Chip to panic and warn him that the potion is rapidly draining his HP. However, as Novice grabs her hand to stop the agonizing burn, he realizes something incredible. The intense pain actually shocked his system enough to silence the bloodthirsty voices in his head. Woman points out that his injuries still need proper care and offers to take him to her nearby campsite. Novice is just relieved he isn't trying to eat her anymore, figuring the potion's damage temporarily suppressed his monstrous urges. Chip, however, throws a complete tantrum begging Novice to just bite her because if Novice's HP hits 0, the little companion will die too, proving just how unhinged the system navigator has become since mutating. As they walk, the woman admits that running into an adventurer is a stroke of luck, revealing that her camp has recently been terrorized by strange monsters. Novice immediately asks if these creatures look like humans, leaving her absolutely stunned that he knows. But before she can answer, a hidden trap violently snaps around her ankle, yanking her up into the dark canopy. Novice pulls himself from the rubble, battered and covered in blood, but his first thought isn't about his own injuries, it's about the woman who led them into this disaster. Desperate to track her down, he activates a skill, hoping his newly altered senses can pick up her trail. Chip, his mutated system companion, immediately starts chewing him out, angrily reminding Novice that he should have just bitten her when he had the chance. Novice snaps at the little bat to shut up as he tries to concentrate, but his new vampire senses are completely out of control. Every sound and smell in the forest floods his brain at a deafening volume, pushing him past his breaking point until he collapses in pure agony. While he's unconscious, the bandits loot his gear, tossing him into a wooden cage because one of them recognizes his face. Novice finally wakes up to Chip frantically yelling his name, only to find himself tied up right in the middle of a bustling bandit camp. Outside the bars, the very woman they were looking for is laughing at his expense, handing off a ransom note and calling our hero a total idiot. Chip doesn't miss the chance to say, "I told you so," furious that this woman played them for absolute fools from the very start. But Novice isn't her only victim. A voice calls out from the shadows of his cell, another captured adventurer who reveals how the exact same woman, Sandra, wiped out his entire party. She poisoned their drinks, waited for them to collapse from exhaustion in the forest, and then ruthlessly slaughtered them while they were paralyzed. Novice can't understand how a cold-blooded killer like that could be operating with official guild quests, but the defeated adventurer admits the documents were likely forged to bait naive heroes. The realization hits Novice hard. His strict Paladin code and refusal to harm humans blinded him to the trap and doomed his team. And as the scarred bandit leader steps up to the cage, he mocks our hero's hollow morals, laughing at a supposed protector who can slaughter monsters but is completely powerless against human scum. As Novice reels from his injuries, he is suddenly flooded with the dying creature's memories, realizing the monster was once an innocent human. The broken man's memories reveal how he was brutally tortured by the very bandits Novice had previously spared, and with his dying breath, he begs our hero to kill the monsters who ruined his life. Seeing the sheer cruelty of the bandits play out in the man's mind, Novice is consumed by guilt over his own rigid moral code. He realizes his refusal to execute human enemies only paved the way for this horrific tragedy, and a dark, violent resolve begins to take root. Accepting the dying man's final plea, Novice consumes his blood, completing a system quest that fully restores his health and triggers a level up. With his eyes glowing a menacing red and a deadly new skill called Blood Claws unlocked, he swears to slaughter every last bandit. Meanwhile, out in the dark forest, a rescue party of adventurers nervously discusses a ransom note demanding 10 gold coins for a captured noble named Dunkern. Uneasy about Novice's missing team, a blonde scout volunteers to check the path ahead, only to suddenly drop from the trees with glowing, unnatural eyes. Back at the bandit camp, a gray-haired female bandit cruelly taunts her prisoners, eager to extort a massive payday from her wealthy captive's family. She orders her men to wake the battered hostage, mocking him for being an absolute embarrassment to his noble bloodline. But when she unlocks the cell, panic immediately sets in as she finds their golden ticket completely unresponsive in a pool of blood. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoes from the shadows, revealing that the prisoners became close friends in the dark and that the dead man just gave him a very special gift. Novice is bleeding out when his corrupted system suddenly pings with a grim reward, 50 EXP for a human kill and a blood-type detection. Haunted by the memory of the cavern monster tearing his team apart, our hero checks his status and realizes he has 5 unused stat points. But he doesn't have time to heal. He stumbles into a camp where a group of violent men immediately accuse him of murder, screaming to rip out his throat and feed him to the dogs. Surrounded and desperate, Novice orders Chip to dump every single stat point into agility, and the mutated navigator instantly zaps the upgrade into his system. The moment the bandits lunge, Novice explodes into motion. He might have lost his old Paladin acceleration skills and the system reset, but his new vampiric speed is terrifying. He tears through the camp, slaughtering the men in a blur of red energy and racking up EXP with every kill until not a single enemy is left standing. Leaving a bloody trail of bodies in his wake, Novice finally catches his breath as Chip celebrates blowing off some steam. The massacre pushes Novice straight to level 3, completely restoring his health and granting him 5 fresh stat points. But the victory is cut short when a slow clap echoes through the carnage. It's Taxon, the corrupt bandit leader Novice had locked away earlier. Taksin mocks our hero for breaking his sacred oath never to kill, but Novice snaps back that these men were monsters who deserved it. Before Novice can react, Taksin lunges with terrifying speed and buries a blade straight into his chest. Novice might have defeated this guy before, but with his levels completely reset, he's at a massive disadvantage. As the two clash in a deadly flurry of strikes, Novice realizes he's in for the fight of his life. Novice clashes with Taksin, the corrupt bandit leader, but his depleted health puts him at a massive disadvantage. Taksin taunts our hero, claiming that without his fancy skills and self-righteous morals, Novice is just another monster trying to survive. But Novice completely flips the script. Rejecting the bandit's twisted logic, he taps into his new demonic system and activates Blood Claws. It's a brutal new skill that drains his own life force instead of mana, and with his eyes glowing a menacing red, he unleashes a devastating strike that instantly brings Taksin to his knees. Coughing up blood, the defeated bandit laughs in Novice's face. He drops a massive bombshell, revealing that his bandit crew actually works directly with the Adventurers Guild, kicking back a cut of their stolen profits to the higher-ups. Taksin dies with a smirk, leaving Novice completely paralyzed by the revelation. While Chip, his newly mutated system companion, complains that the fight ended too soon, Novice spirals into a dark realization. If the guild has been secretly funding criminals and profiting off innocent deaths, everything he fought for as a paladin was a lie. But an existential crisis will have to wait because Novice is critically low on health. Chip snaps him back to reality with a grim solution. The only way to heal is to drink the dead bandit's blood. The mere thought of giving in to his new vampire instincts makes Novice violently gag, proving he hasn't completely lost his humanity just yet. Staring at his trembling, blood-stained hands, Novice realizes his new monstrous nature makes him a walking hazard to everyone around him. He knows his guild desperately needs his help against the corrupt leaders pulling the strings, but with his stats reset to level 1, he's completely powerless. Pushed to the brink, our hero makes a dark choice and consumes the dead bandit's blood. The system instantly rewards him with a stat boost and a new inspection skill, but the terrifying part is the taste. It's intoxicatingly sweet, and every cell in his mutating body screams for more. His gruesome feast is suddenly interrupted when a fellow adventurer stumbles into the clearing. Seeing Novice drenched in blood with glowing red eyes, she gasps his name in sheer horror before turning and fleeing into the woods. Chip points out she probably thought she was next on the menu, and Novice admits he would have run too. As the system issues a new quest to reach level 5, Novice questions if the system forced him to kill or if he's truly losing his humanity. Realizing he has completely shattered his sacred vows, he violently tears off his paladin armor, declaring he no longer deserves to wear it. He tells Chip they can't return to the village until he learns to control this monstrous hunger. His plan is to grind levels in the wild until he's strong enough to hunt down Taksin and the corrupt guild executives who set his team up to die. But since he just destroyed his gear, Chip suggests looting the dead bandit for some fresh clothes. Stripping a corpse is a new low for a former holy knight, but Novice figures he's already crossed the line. A few days later, back at the Duskwatch Guild Hall, Novice's academy friends Nomo and Styles are mourning his apparent death. While their ally Park desperately clings to the hope that they might still be alive since no bodies were found, the others gently remind him that no one survives in the wild for this long. Back at the guild, Park refuses to accept that Novice and the others are dead, nearly coming to blows with anyone who doubts their survival. But Taksin, the corrupt sub-guild leader, is already celebrating. With Novice out of the picture, Taksin loudly declares himself the new top dog of the town. He even takes credit for wiping out the escaped bandits, bragging that he's the only one strong enough to clean up Novice's mess. Taksin believes that with the system user dead, the king will soon choose a replacement, and he's fully ready to claim that ultimate power. But Claire knows the truth. She knows Taksin is lying about the bandits, and out in the forest, the real monster is just getting started. Novice and his mutated companion, Chip, have spent the last few days hunting and leveling up. Instead of a normal analyze skill, Novice's corrupted system reveals the blood types of his victims, granting him different amounts of experience for each kill. Rare blood is the real prize. Consuming it directly increases his resistance to the sun. Every time he levels up, his growing health pool lets him endure the daylight and fight off his maddening bloodlust just a little bit longer. Arriving at a misty cavern known as Winkla Hollow, Novice prepares to push his limits, drawing his blade as he sets out to reach level 5. Meanwhile, back at the village, Park asks Claire why she ordered them to return early that fateful day. Trembling, Claire reveals the horrifying truth. She saw creatures lurking in the dark, monsters with glowing red eyes. The village woman asks Novice if he's ever heard of vampires, describing the exact red-eyed creatures of the dark that he is slowly turning into. Her words strike a nerve, and as his unwavering hunger for blood flares up, his own eyes flash a predatory crimson. To test his new limits, Novice heads into a dark cave swarming with monstrous bird-like bats. He quickly realizes that killing them only grants a measly 15 experience points, meaning he'll have to slaughter a mountain of them to level up. Luckily, his mutated system companion, Chip, points out that they have no shortage of targets. When the swarm lunges, Novice doesn't even flinch. Moving with supernatural speed, he deflects their strikes and unleashes a brutal new skill called Blood Claw, tearing straight through the monsters with devastating crimson energy. Despite the massacre, Novice notes that monster experience is absolute garbage compared to the massive gains from killing humans. But there's a twisted upside to his new powers. His system grants bonus experience for consuming specific blood types, handing him an extra 30 points for O-positive. Feeling the rush of the hunt, our hero finally understands how the elite vampires managed to get so terrifyingly strong. Channeling his rage over his murdered friends, Novice launches himself at the shadowy, bird-like monster. He trades brutal blows with the beast, pushing his new, unrefined limits. But as the fight drags into direct sunlight, a system warning flashes. His stats are plummeting. Realizing the sun is now his worst enemy, Novice activates his Blood Claw skill, coating his hands in lethal red energy. He maneuvers the beast back into the shadows, instantly restoring his stats and strikes. The attack lands, but the skill comes with a steep price. Using Blood Claw on both hands drains his health twice as fast, pushing him closer to death and amplifying his maddening thirst. Chip casually suggests drinking human blood to heal, but Novice firmly rejects it, vowing to uphold the sacred rules of his former brotherhood. Embracing the difficult path he's chosen, Novice draws his sword. He meets the monster's dive with a blinding flurry of strikes, slicing the beast apart in a brutal mid-air clash. The kill grants him enough experience to finally hit level 5, completing his quest. A new system window pops up, officially confirming the grim truth he already knew: his race has been unlocked as a vampire. He accepts that he is now one of the very monsters that burn in the sun and crave human blood. But before he can fully process his new reality, another massive system alert rings out, asking him to select a class. Sitting in the dark cell, Novice is suddenly pulled into system space for a mandatory class upgrade. 3 glowing cards hover before him: Night Warrior, Blood Manipulator, and Scarlet Spellbinder. Touching the Night Warrior card shoots a violent vision straight into his mind, revealing that this class creates physically dominant vampires who gain bonus stats with every single level up. The mental download leaves him clutching his head in pain, but he pushes through to check the others. The Blood Manipulator class uses health points to fuel devastating combat skills, while the Scarlet Spellbinder unlocks mana for magic. Chip watches in confusion as Novice endures another massive headache, asking what path he's going to choose. Weighing his options, Novice leans toward the Night Warrior. Back when he was a human paladin, his entire fighting style revolved around defensive magic and swordsmanship. He figures sticking to physical combat makes the most sense, since learning pure magic from scratch would be useless. But Chip violently shoots the idea down, demanding he pick the Blood Manipulator. Novice argues that sacrificing HP for skills is a terrible idea when he's already starving for blood, but Chip insists that his deep link to the system tells him this is the only correct path. The little navigator begs Novice to trust him, asking if he's ever steered him wrong. Flashing back to all the times Chip's quick thinking and protective barriers kept him alive, Novice realizes his companion hasn't failed him yet. Realizing he needs more power to deal with these corrupt thugs, Novice takes Chip's advice and locks in his new class, Blood Manipulator. A surge of dark energy envelops him, painfully mutating his body as his hair turns stark white and his eyes glow a piercing red. The system confirms his evolution, bumping him to level 5 and drastically boosting his health and energy reserves. The evolution comes with some massive perks. He unlocks Blood Slash, letting him weaponize his own blood as a razor-sharp aura at the cost of 2 HP per strike. But the real game changer is his new passive ability. His vampire body has adapted to the sun, completely nullifying daylight burn damage and giving him way more freedom to move around. And it gets even crazier. The system reveals that drinking different human blood types will now grant him permanent buffs, from boosting his aura efficiency to permanently lowering his monstrous hunger. Novice realizes that despite the agonizing transformation, picking this class was actually a massive win. But that relief is instantly shattered when his quest log updates. Alongside grinding to level 25, the system drops a brutal ultimatum. He has exactly 24 hours to consume human blood or he'll face a severe penalty. Seeing Novice panic over the deadline, his mutated companion Chip just flashes a sinister grin and laughs maniacally, proving once and for all that this corrupted system fairy can no longer be trusted. With the local bandit camps cleared out and the clock ticking on his bloodlust, Novice steps out into the daylight. Thanks to his new sun resistance, he can finally make his move. He sets his sights back on the village, determined to uncover the truth behind the corrupted guild before his 24 hours run out. Meanwhile, the elite vampire Sauron wipes fresh blood from his mouth. Smirking with glowing red eyes, he decides it's time to make his own return, setting the stage for a deadly collision. Novice embraces his dark awakening in the bandit camp. The mastermind behind his capture is already making his next move. Back at the guild hall, the scarred bandit leader Taxon boldly declares himself the best candidate for the new guild leader. With the current leader Old Bob conveniently lost in the woods, Taxon leverages the recent surge in monster attacks and takes full credit for wiping out the local bandits. A brilliant lie, considering he runs them. He demands the leadership position, claiming he's the only one strong enough to keep the town safe. Park refuses to let a ruthless thug hijack the guild. He steps up and calls Taxon out, reminding the room that a guild exists to protect the weak and serve the community, not just hoard power. To prove his point, Park gestures to the quest board, revealing that ever since Novice disappeared, every dangerous, low-paying quest above C rank has been completely ignored. He warns the crowd that the townspeople will never feel safe with a selfish mercenary calling the shots. Taxon just laughs off the accusation, firing back that his elite crew only takes the high-paying B-rank jobs because true strength deserves top coin. He argues that risking their lives for pennies is a fool's game, and shockingly his greed strikes a chord. But money always talks louder than loyalty, and several adventurers in the crowd actually start agreeing, deciding they'd rather follow a powerhouse than do charity work. Seeing the crowd sway toward the corrupt leader, Park realizes that words aren't going to win this election. Flipping the script, he challenges Taxon to a duel, declaring that if he wins, Taxon's entire argument about strength crumbles. Taxon eagerly accepts the challenge with a sinister smirk, promising Park that losing will come with fatal consequences once he takes over the guild. News of the showdown spreads like wildfire, and the entire town rushes to the square to watch the two clash. Taxon draws his blade, eager to crush the rebellion before the sun even sets. But the gap in power is devastating, and as the fight begins, Park is immediately sent flying backward, completely outmatched by the ruthless bandit leader. The confrontation explodes into violence as Park, the armored adventurer, fiercely clashes blades with the scarred bandit leader, Taxon. But Taxon easily deflects the desperate strikes, mocking the knight for being all muscle and no brains. Bored with the warm-up, the corrupt leader flashes a wicked smirk and decides it is time to end the game. Moving with terrifying speed, Taxon overwhelms Park and lands a devastating strike that sends the knight crashing down in a pool of his own blood. Standing over his broken opponent, Taxon boasts that his twin blades were forged from the great harpies he slaughtered himself, claiming those weapons give him the absolute right to rule the guild. But even battered and bleeding, Park refuses to submit to a tyrant. He spits at the bandit's feet and tells Taxon that if Novice were here, he would wipe the floor with him, proudly declaring that our hero was the true strongest in the guild. That comparison strikes a massive nerve, sending Taxon into a blind, ego-driven rage. He mercilessly beats and stomps on the fallen knight, screaming that Park's precious protector isn't here to save him anymore. The rest of the guild watches the brutal execution in absolute terror, too paralyzed by fear to intervene. A blonde guild member bursts into tears and tries to draw her weapon to save her friend, but another adventurer holds her back, warning that Taxon will just slaughter her next. She cries out, begging to know who will save them if they don't fight back. But just as all hope seems lost, a heavy set of footsteps echoes through the terrified crowd, and as a mysterious cloaked figure steps into the clearing, the blonde woman realizes their protector might not be gone after all. But putting an end to Taxon in the shadows isn't enough. Novice needs to strip him of his power publicly. Stepping into the town square, our hero interrupts the corrupt leader just as he's brutalizing a fallen knight. Taxon scoffs, demanding to know who is dumb enough to interrupt his lesson, but Novice coldly replies that Taxon is the one about to get schooled. The moment Novice drops his hood, the surrounding crowd erupts in absolute shock. They can't believe he's actually alive, but the relief quickly turns to suspicious whispers as they wonder why it took him so long to return, and more importantly, where the rest of his team is. Taxon seizes the opportunity to flip the script, mocking Novice for disappearing while accusing him of attacking a fellow guild member. The scarred thug loudly demands to know why Novice is the only survivor, masterfully turning the crowd's suspicion against our hero. Suddenly, Taxon lunges forward, his blade surging with explosive purple energy. Novice barely dodges the lethal strike, quickly realizing he's in a terrible position. His physical body is sluggish, and with so many eyes watching, he can't risk using his new vampiric blood skills. The two clash in a shower of sparks, but the onlookers quickly notice that Novice hasn't used a single combat skill to defend himself. Taxon senses the hesitation and ruthlessly presses the attack, roaring that whatever happened out in the wild has left our hero completely pathetic. Even though he still has plenty of health, Novice knows he can't win this fight without exposing his monstrous true nature. He takes a brutal hit and goes down, leaving the crowd stunned as they realize Taxon has just officially secured his spot as the new guild leader. Basking in his dirty victory, Taxon gloats that he has an entire guild building to run now. As the corrupt leader walks away, Novice's loyal ally Park shoves his way through the shocked crowd, horrified as he rushes to help his battered friend. Claire and Park are horrified by Novice's pale, blood-soaked appearance, completely unaware of his dark transformation. Claire demands to know why he risked his life in such a terrible state, but Novice just pulls them into a hug. He confesses he couldn't stand the thought of them getting hurt anymore, even if it meant throwing himself into the meat grinder. Meanwhile, Chip, his mutated system companion, hovers nearby, sensing the chaotic red energy swirling around our hero. The little bat can't help but notice that Novice's new vampiric aura smells absolutely delicious. Later, safely back at the tavern, Novice comes clean about slaughtering the bandits. Claire realizes he broke his sacred Paladin code to get revenge, and Novice solemnly admits he can no longer call himself a member of the Holy Order. But Claire doesn't care about some dusty old rules, she's just glad he survived, assuming his system is temporarily broken from the emotional trauma. Chip, however, is secretly offended that Novice is playing the victim when his new dark powers have actually made him stronger than ever. The tavern chatter soon shifts to a strict curfew placed on the town due to a terrifying mass murderer roaming the streets. The locals whisper that even Taxon's brutal bandit crew was too terrified to face this mysterious killer. Hearing enough, Novice excuses himself to rest, though Claire watches him leave with a lingering, suspicious gaze. But our hero isn't going to sleep. A glowing red system warning flashes in his vision, giving him exactly 8 hours to consume human blood or face the consequences. Looking over the local bounty board, Novice makes a cold calculation. If he has to feed his monstrous hunger, he's going to drain someone who actually deserves it. When Chip asks how they'll ever track down the elusive mass murderer in the dark, Novice just smirks, confident that the prey will come to them. Standing on a balcony overlooking the dim streets, Novice watches as a panicked man runs for his life, cursing his luck for breaking the curfew. The terrified guy spots Novice and begs for help, explaining that a strange figure in black just ambushed him near the inn. Realizing this is the exact target he's been waiting for, Novice has the man lead the way straight into the murderer's hunting ground. Back in the village, Novice tracks down one of the corrupt Duskwatch guild members. The armored man plays friendly at first, asking our hero to check something out before suddenly launching a lethal sneak attack from behind. But Novice is already one step ahead, effortlessly dodging the strike. When the traitor asks how his perfect act was exposed, Novice just smirks, revealing that the guy absolutely reeks of blood. Topping the facade, the corrupt adventurer draws his sword, crackling with electric energy. He admits he saw Novice fighting earlier that afternoon, but arrogantly claims our hero doesn't stand a chance against him. Novice isn't fazed in the slightest. With the sun finally down, his vampiric powers are completely unrestrained, and he decides this traitor will make the perfect test dummy for his newly awakened skills. The armored man lunges forward, boasting that he isn't afraid, but his confidence shatters instantly. Novice intercepts him with terrifying speed, moving so fast the traitor realizes our hero must have been holding back massively during the day. Panicking, the corrupt guild member abandons the fight and tries to flee across the village rooftops to create some distance. You can't outrun a vampire in the dead of night. Novice easily closes the gap, mocking the traitor for running away, and states that since the man has already seen his true face, letting him live isn't an option. Tapping into his system, Novice sacrifices a fraction of his own health to activate a brand new skill, unleashing a massive, blinding red blood slash that catches the fleeing traitor completely off guard. Taxon wastes no time and lunges straight for our hero, but Novice is ready. He unleashes his newly unlocked blood slash, sending a massive wave of red energy tearing through the town square. The corrupt leader is shocked to see Novice still wielding skills, completely unaware of his vampiric awakening. But this new power comes with a heavy price. Every strike directly drains Novice's own health. When his next slash misses, Taxon instantly closes the gap, grinning as he realizes the projectile attacks are useless at point-blank range. Flipping the script, Novice molds his blood aura into razor-sharp claws and meets the usurper head-on. A brutal melee breaks out, but Taxon's speed is overwhelming, and he manages to land a clean hit. Realizing he needs to slow the bandit down before his health completely bottoms out, Novice decides to gamble on an untested ability. He activates Blood Control, a high-cost skill that lets him coat objects in his aura and manipulate them with his mind. Instantly, crimson ribbons of energy shoot across the battlefield, wrapping tightly around Taxon's neck and arms and completely immobilizing him. It burns through his health every 10 seconds, but the opening is all he needs. With the usurper locked in place, Novice lunges forward and drives his blood claws straight through his enemy, ending the fight in a single, devastating strike. As Taxon's lifeless body falls, the system chimes in, rewarding Novice for taking down a powerful human. He instantly levels up to 6 and gains a massive 5 stat points, way more than he ever got as a human paladin. Better yet, his max health jumps up, giving him an even bigger pool of blood to fuel his monstrous new abilities. Reviewing his recent evolution, Chip points out Novice's newest skill, Blood Cannon, a devastating energy blast that comes with the steep cost of consuming half his health. Deciding to save his unspent stat points for later, our hero checks his system and realizes his recent meal has bought him exactly 24 hours before his vampiric thirst returns. Knowing they can't afford to be caught, Novice forces a complaining Chip to abandon the dead bandit and any potential loot. He knows he needs a permanent cure for his infected system before his secret gets out, and his first step is to interrogate Taksin about the guild's deep-rooted corruption. Under the cover of darkness, Novice stealthily leaps across the rooftops to slip back into town unnoticed. But he isn't as invisible as he thinks. Claire spots him sneaking back late in the night, her suspicions growing that her friend is hiding a dark secret. The next day, Claire is stopped in the bustling town square by a fellow adventurer who mentions an emergency guild meeting. Assuming it's about Taksin's hostile takeover, Claire is stunned when the man reveals the real reason. A mysterious murderer has struck again, leaving a fresh corpse on a rooftop. Meanwhile, Novice is out on a daytime hunt, but his new vampiric nature quickly becomes a massive liability. The harsh sunlight instantly halves all of his stats, leaving him dangerously sluggish as a monstrous wolf lunges in and knocks him back. Seeing Novice struggle against the beast, his fellow adventurers rally to his side. They charge in to back him up, swinging their weapons to take down the creature before it can finish off their weakened ally. As the brutal battle takes its toll, Novice finds himself pushed to his limits, wondering if he really was rushing back into the adventurer life too soon. Bleeding and exhausted on the ground, he apologizes for dragging his allies into this mess, but his relentless drive pushes him to keep fighting. He recalls how this whole chaotic situation started back at the guild hall when his old academy friends suggested they take on a quest together. Claire had her doubts about Novice's condition, but the group figured getting back into action was exactly what he needed to recover. Knowing the quest would take place during the day, Novice accepted the risk, realizing he couldn't hide from the sun forever and needed to test his new vampire limits. Since they needed a full party of 5, he confidently pointed out Nomo and Styles, dragging the startled academy recruits into their squad. But when one of them casually mentions that anyone would be honored to work with a former protector, the mood instantly shatters. A terrifying, blood-red aura erupts from Novice as his suppressed rage boils over, and he viciously warns them to never call him by that title again. Later, out in the sunlit forest, the newly formed party puts their teamwork to the test against a pack of ferocious, rune-marked wolves. Despite the sunlight draining his vampire strength, Novice tears through the beasts with his blood-infused blade, easily overwhelming the pack. After effortlessly clearing the monsters, Novice flashes a smug thumbs-up, thoroughly enjoying his own performance. Claire just glares back at him, completely unamused by his reckless showboating. Their banter is cut short when a group of panicked villagers rushes down the forest path, begging the adventurers for immediate help. They reveal that a massive, monstrous bird is tearing apart the nearby village of Yonville, and the local guild is already losing the fight against the overwhelming beast. The memory of the tragedy that broke his old life still haunts him. Out in the field, a massive Grade B griffin descends on the village of Yonville, bringing a storm of destruction. Park, Claire, and the rest of the vanguard step up to hold the line, knowing that if they fall, the entire settlement will be wiped off the map. Realizing they are completely outmatched, Park orders Novice to fall back and rally the guild. Since Novice is still hiding his new vampire nature from his friends, they assume he's too weak to fight. Knowing the moonlight actually gives him a massive edge, Novice bites his tongue and agrees to play the messenger, promising to return with backup as fast as he can. As Park's squad charges in to buy the villagers some time, Novice sprints through the dark forest. He knows a griffin is a death sentence for a small team and prays they can just survive until he gets back. Bursting through the doors of the Duskwatch Guild, a desperate Novice screams for Taksin. He warns the tavern that a Grade B monster is slaughtering Yonville and begs them to deploy immediate reinforcements to save their guildmates. An adventurer stands up to join the rescue, but Taksin immediately shuts him down. Because to a corrupt leader, money always talks louder than loyalty. Taksin coldly explains that Yonville is rival territory, meaning there's zero profit in saving it. When Novice furiously reminds him that their own guildmates are out there dying, Taksin just shrugs, calling it a suicide mission with no financial return, and tells Novice to go save them himself. Taksin mocks him by calling him a protector, a title that twists like a knife in our hero's gut. As Chip warns him that his friends won't last much longer, Novice glares daggers at the corrupt leader, swearing that if his team dies tonight, Taksin's head is next. With no time left, Novice bolts back toward the village, ordering his system companion Chip to dump every single available stat point straight into agility. His body erupts in a crimson aura as his speed skyrockets, blurring through the night just as the flaming griffin unleashes its full, terrifying power on his outmatched friends. Out in the field, Claire and the rest of the guild find themselves pinned down by a massive, flaming griffin. The beast is staying high in the air, completely out of sword range, and Claire realizes their arrows are just burning up before they even scratch it. Watching from the safety of the tree line, Novice and Chip analyze the battlefield. Novice knows his friends are sitting ducks, and as traumatic memories of the people he failed to save flash through his mind, he refuses to let history repeat itself. He needs a devastating ranged attack that the monster won't see coming, so he activates a massive blood energy skill that instantly drains 50% of his total health. Just as Park leaps into the air for a desperate final strike, Novice unleashes a blinding bolt of purple energy that completely obliterates the beast from above. Guild erupts into cheers over the slain griffin, though Claire quickly realizes that the fatal blow came from the forest, not their team. By the time she looks, Novice is already hidden deep in the shadows, amazed by the sheer power of his new skill despite the brutal health cost. With his resolve hardened, our hero swears he will never forgive Taxon for what he's done, just as his stats spike and he officially reaches level 8. Back at the guild hall, the current leader drops a bombshell on the murmuring crowd. He's stepping down soon, and he officially appoints Taxon as the new sub-guild leader. Park and Claire are completely disgusted. Handing the reins to a corrupt usurper is the worst possible move, and a wave of panic ripples through the remaining loyal guild members. Taxon wastes no time flexing his new authority, announcing their first major assignment. The king has ordered them to wipe out a massive goblin camp on the kingdom's outskirts, though Novice can tell Taxon couldn't care less about the kingdom's safety. To cover more ground, Taxon splits the guild into smaller hunting parties, but he insists on assigning the teams himself. Park immediately senses a trap, knowing this is the perfect cover for foul play. Taxon's true motive becomes clear when he places Park and Claire in Squad B, deliberately isolating Novice by drafting him into his own squad. Claire nearly starts a riot, furious at being separated from her friend, but Park holds her back to avoid a scene. Novice actually welcomes the setup. Being isolated with the usurper means he finally has a chance to interrogate him about the missing guild members, and he quietly accepts the assignment while Taxon shoots him a sinister smile. By midday, the horn sounds and the guild gears up to march out, with Taxon leading his squad to scout the western path. The trap is set, and the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. Before they split up, Claire and Park pull Novice aside, promising to clear their route quickly and watch his back. They know Taxon is plotting something deadly, and our hero is walking straight into the lion's den. The town's immediate threats neutralized, Novice decides it's finally time to figure out exactly what Taxon knows about the recent betrayals. He leads a small squad of armed men deep into the dense forest, tracking a known goblin hideout. As Novice spots fresh footprints and signals for silence, one of his allies nervously reminds him to be careful since the sun is still out, a serious, potentially lethal handicap for his new vampiric body. Suddenly, a pack of red-eyed goblins bursts from the foliage, launching a vicious ambush. But they picked the wrong target. Novice draws his blade and tears through the monsters with blinding speed, chaining his strikes together and cutting down the ambushers before they can even land a hit. He finishes the assault by delivering a devastating, bone-crushing blow straight to a goblin's head. But just as the dust settles, a brutal strike catches Novice completely off guard. Blood sprays from his mouth as his system flashes a dire warning that he is losing consciousness. A sinister, red-eyed grin is the last thing he sees before everything goes black. Hours later, Novice and his allies snap awake to find themselves tied to trees around a dark campfire. They try to break free, but the restraints won't budge an inch. A menacing figure steps into the firelight, laughing maniacally at their pathetic struggles. It's Taxon, and he smugly reveals that the ropes are woven from high-grade beast sinew designed to completely seal magic and drain physical strength. Furious, Novice demands to know what the corrupt leader is playing at. Taxon just sneers, explaining that this execution was ordered by the king himself. He mocks Novice, declaring that the once great system user is now completely useless, and that news of him losing his original powers has already sealed his death warrant. Bound and helpless, Novice is furious, demanding to know why the king would order his capture. Taxon casually explains that the king, the very being who granted Novice his system, now considers him completely useless since word spread that he lost his powers. But Taxon isn't just a loyal lapdog, he has his own greedy motive. He reveals a dark secret the king fed him. If he kills a system user, he can steal that system for himself. With our hero's powers, Taxon plans to become completely unstoppable. Tied to a massive tree in the middle of the forest, Novice spits venom, calling the corrupt leader a coward. But Taxon just flashes a sinister grin, telling our guy not to worry because he isn't going to kill him just yet. Taxon has a twisted master plan. He needs to play the hero in the upcoming Goblin subjugation quest, and by keeping Novice missing, the rest of the guild will assume their former idol abandoned them. Only after he secures all the glory will Taxon finish Novice off and let his friends find the corpse. Hearing this, the pieces finally click into place for Novice as he remembers a dead bandit leader dropping Taxon's name. Catching the realization on our hero's face, Taxon figures out that Novice was the one who slaughtered his thug allies, and mockingly thanks him for cleaning up his loose ends. With his trap perfectly set, Taxon orders 2 of his men to follow him and heads out to join the subjugation. He leaves Novice bound to the tree to rot in the dark until it's time for his execution. But his new class is immediately put to the test when he walks right into an ambush and finds himself bound to a tree. Taksin, the corrupt subguild leader, steps out of the shadows with a club, gloating that there is nothing better than watching arrogant fighters fall from their high horses. Furious, Novice thrashes against the bindings and vows that Taksin will pay for his betrayal with his life. However, every time our hero tries to break out, the thick ropes just dig deeper into his flesh. Chip chimes in with a grim warning, confirming that Taksin wasn't bluffing. The enchanted bindings are actively suppressing his system skills, leaving Novice completely stripped of his magic and desperately wondering how to survive. Taksin made one fatal miscalculation. He locked away the magic, but not the raw physical stats of a night warrior. Pushing his newly awakened vampiric body to the absolute limit, Novice shatters the restrictive bindings through sheer brute force. Free from the ropes, he unleashes a blindingly fast counterattack, tearing through the ambush and proving that he doesn't need system skills to be a total menace on the battlefield. Novice doesn't wait for the rest of the Duskwatch Guild to catch up. He reaches the outskirts of the village, finding the area already devastated by the Griffin's rampage. Deep in the nearby forest, a chaotic magical battle is already underway. A warrior clad in brilliant white and gold armor is desperately holding the line against a swarming horde of green-skinned monsters, trying to buy the villagers time. Novice immediately dives into the fray, his new Night Warrior class pushing his physical stats through the roof. He tears through the monster frontline in seconds, completely free from the blood hunger that used to hold him back. Suddenly, the massive griffin swoops down from the canopy, aiming straight for the exhausted defenders. But Novice intercepts the beast midair, unleashing his blood claw to clash directly against its razor-sharp talons. The sheer force of their collision sends shockwaves tearing through the trees. Thanks to his new class upgrades, Novice barely feels the sting of the daylight, allowing him to match the giant monster blow for blow. He chains his attacks with ruthless precision, driving the massive beast back. The griffin screeches in panic, completely caught off guard by a vampire who fights with the brutal, close-quarters discipline of a paladin. With one final, devastating strike, Novice brings the griffin crashing to the dirt, saving the village in record time. His new powers are absolute, but he knows he'll need every ounce of this strength when he finally returns to purge the corruption rotting his guild from the inside. The dust settles over the village as Novice stands victorious over the charred remains of the Grade B griffin. His system immediately floods with notifications, rewarding him with a massive level up and a legendary drop, the blazing griffin core. Chip, his mutated system companion, quickly calculates the core's value, confirming it's worth at least 3 billion resources on the black market. But before Novice can safely store his prize, the heavy sound of armored footsteps echoes through the ruined streets. The rest of the Duskwatch Guild finally arrives, led by Taksin, the corrupt sub-guild leader who has been bleeding the region dry. Expecting to find the villagers slaughtered, Taksin is stunned to see Novice standing alone amidst the massive crater. Greed instantly overrides Taksin's confusion, and he orders his men to confiscate the griffin core, claiming all guild kills belong to him. But the worst mistake a predator can make is misjudging its prey. Novice doesn't even flinch, instead unleashing his new Night Warrior aura and suffocating the corrupt adventurers with a crushing wave of bloodlust. Taksin panics, commanding his elite enforcers to strike our hero down before he can react. It's a complete mismatch. Moving faster than the human eye can track, Novice dodges their heavy strikes and retaliates with a sweeping blood claw, disarming 4 men in a single, blinding motion. Realizing he just picked a fight with a monster, Taksin turns and sprints for the tree line, abandoning his bleeding squad. But Novice isn't about to let his prime target escape, crossing the distance in a heartbeat and pinning the corrupt leader to the ground. With a blood-red blade pressed to his throat, Taksin completely breaks, confessing everything about the guild's underground operations. He reveals that Sauron, a notorious elite vampire, is the true mastermind funding the region's banditry. Having extracted the names and locations he needs, Novice knocks the traitor out cold, leaving him for the authorities. He realizes that taking down a few corrupt guild members won't be enough. He has to sever the head of the snake. To prepare for the coming war against the elites, Novice crushes the griffin core in his hand, absorbing its primal energy directly into his bloodstream. The system chimes once more, pushing his stats into uncharted territory as he sets his sights on Sauron. Novice and his squad, Park, Nomo, and Styles, arrive at the desolate borderlands to carry out their new orders. The tension is thick, as everyone knows Taksin only assigned this goblin subjugation quest hoping they wouldn't come back alive. Suddenly, Chip warns Novice of multiple heat signatures closing in fast from the surrounding terrain. This isn't just a few straggling monsters, it is a highly coordinated, full-blown goblin ambush designed to wipe them out. The horde swarms them from the treeline, screeching for blood. Park and the others brace for a brutal, desperate fight, but Novice steps to the front, deciding this is the perfect warm-up for his new Night Warrior class. He activates his Blood Claw, tearing through the front line of goblins with terrifying speed. The monsters don't even have time to swing their crude weapons before they are completely shredded by his vampiric strikes. Nomo and Styles watch in absolute shock as their friend turns a deadly trap into a one-man slaughterhouse. Even veteran adventurers like Park are stunned by the sheer, overwhelming difference in Novice's power since his class upgrade. But the real threat finally emerges when a massive hobgoblin commander steps onto the battlefield, roaring orders to rally the remaining horde. A creature this size could easily crush an entire squad of low-ranking adventurers with a single swing. Novice doesn't hesitate for a second. He launches himself directly at the towering commander, effortlessly dodging its heavy club strike with his enhanced agility before closing the distance. Channeling his energy, he fires his blood cannon point-blank into the beast, instantly obliterating the hobgoblin and shattering the morale of the entire horde. The surviving goblins immediately scatter in terror. With the monsters routed, Novice stands victorious, racking up a massive amount of experience points from the slaughter. As he wipes the monster blood from his hands, he knows Taxon is going to be absolutely furious that his little assassination plot failed so miserably. Taxon stands over the bound Novice, laughing at how easy it was to trap him. He kicks our hero into the dirt, bragging that these monster fiber ropes completely sever users' connection to the system. Leaving him as bait for the incoming goblin horde, the corrupt sub-guild leader walks away, convinced he just secured his absolute control over the guild. But arrogance makes people blind. As dozens of snarling goblins close in, Novice doesn't panic. He realizes that while the ropes block his system skills and silence Chip, they can't suppress his innate biological strength as a Night Warrior vampire. Calling on his raw physical power, Novice flexes his muscles and shatters the supposedly unbreakable ropes into dust. The second the bindings snap, Chip's voice floods back into his mind, frantically warning him about the 50-plus goblins lunging for his throat. Novice doesn't even flinch. He unleashes a devastating blood cannon, tearing through the vanguard of the horde in a single blast. Using his enhanced agility, he dances through the remaining monsters, turning the deadly ambush into a one-sided massacre and racking up a massive amount of experience points. Meanwhile, deeper in the forest, Karma catches up to Taxon. His squad is suddenly ambushed by a massive, mutated hobgoblin variant. Instead of fighting like a leader, the cowardly Taxon immediately shoves his own men into the monster's path, desperately trying to buy himself time to run. But before the hobgoblin can crush the betrayed squad members, a crimson blur intercepts the attack. Novice drops into the clearing, effortlessly blocking the beast's massive club with one hand. The entire squad stares in shock at the man who was supposed to be dead. With a casual flick of his wrist, Novice decapitates the Grade C hobgoblin, ending the threat instantly. He turns his glowing red eyes toward a trembling Taxon, making one thing crystal clear: the corrupt leader's reign of terror is officially over. Left alone in the dark woods, Novice strains against the monster fiber ropes binding him to the tree. Just as Taxon planned, the scent of fresh bait draws a horde of ravenous goblins from the shadows, their jagged blades glinting in the moonlight as they close in on their helpless prey. The anti-magic bindings might block his system powers, but Taxon made one fatal miscalculation. Our hero isn't just a system user anymore. Tapping into his innate blood warrior class, Novice boils his own blood, surging with raw vampiric strength to shatter the specialized ropes into dust. Freed from his restraints, Novice unleashes absolute carnage on the ambushers. He tears through the goblin vanguard with his bare hands, painting the forest floor red and instantly bringing Chip, his mutated system companion, back online. Meanwhile, safely back at the forward camp, Taxon is already counting his blood money. He laughs with his elite guards, bragging about how easily he secured the king's bounty by leaving the rookie out to die. But the celebration is cut violently short when a massive, crimson blast obliterates the camp's front gate. Novice steps through the smoke, his eyes glowing with predatory fury, and warns the corrupt leader that his goblin bait had a little too much bite. Taxon panics and orders his guards to attack, but they are completely outmatched. Novice dodges their strikes with his enhanced agility and fires a point-blank blood cannon, wiping out the entire squad and leaving the subguild leader completely defenseless. Flipping the script, Novice binds a terrified Taxon to a post using the very same monster fiber ropes. With the traitor now at his mercy, our hero prepares to extract every single detail about the king's twisted plot to steal system powers. Standing amidst the slaughtered goblins, Novice wipes the green blood from his face, realizing the depth of the betrayal. His system companion, Chip, chimes in with a grim warning. The monster fiber ropes left a residual dampening effect, completely locking his system powers. If our hero wants payback, he'll have to rely entirely on his raw, unassisted vampiric strength. But a pissed-off vampire is the last thing anyone wants tracking them in the dark. Novice taps into his heightened senses, easily picking up the distinct scent of fear and sweat from Taxon's squad. He launches himself into the canopy, moving through the dense forest like a shadow on the hunt. A few miles away, Taxon is already celebrating around a campfire with his corrupt inner circle. He brags about how easily he secured the king's massive bounty, planning to report Novice as just another tragic casualty of the goblin subjugation quest. The worst betrayal always comes from the people closest to you, but revenge usually catches up faster. The campfire suddenly flickers out, and Novice drops from the canopy, his eyes glowing a piercing crimson. Taxon stumbles back in absolute terror, unable to comprehend how the rogue adventurer escaped the unbreakable bindings. Panicking, the sub-guild leader orders his men to attack, but it's a total slaughter. Even without his system skills, Novice is an absolute monster, tearing through the corrupt adventurers with blinding speed and a devastating point-blank blast from his blood cannon. Taxon tries to make a run for it, but Novice instantly pins him to the dirt. Desperate to survive, the traitor spills everything, revealing that the king isn't just capturing system users, he's harvesting their powers to build a private, immortal army. But our guy doesn't negotiate with traitors. He drains Taxon on the spot, absorbing a massive surge of blood energy that instantly shatters his system lock. As his powers flood back, Chip announces a brand new, legendary quest: dismantle the king's corrupt regime. The Spider Queen doesn't hesitate, unleashing a barrage of venomous webbing that tears through the adventurers' defenses. Claire steps up to protect the group, but the monster's terrifying speed is simply too much, and a massive, venom-laced fang pierces right through her. Park and the remaining adventurers watch in absolute horror as their friend falls. Before the beast can finish them off, a blur of crimson bursts from the treeline, revealing Novice moving with blinding vampiric speed. Chip, his mutated system companion, immediately chimes in with a warning about the Queen's lethal toxicity. Ignoring the danger, our hero charges up his blood cannon and fires a concentrated blast straight into the monster's face, forcing it to drop its prey. Furious, the colossal spider turns all its aggro onto Novice, swiping at him with razor-sharp legs that slice through solid trees. He easily weaves through the deadly strikes, analyzing the creature's thick armor and realizing that standard attacks won't even leave a scratch. Sometimes you have to play dangerously to win. Novice intentionally dives right under the beast's guard, dodging a point-blank venom spray to target its unarmored underbelly. He channels all his raw strength into a devastating upward strike, rupturing the Queen's weak point and sending her crashing to the ground. In a desperate final move, the dying monster summons a swarm of smaller arachnids, but Novice just tears through them like wet paper. With one last, brutal surge of power, he obliterates the Spider Queen completely. The system instantly rewards his victory, flooding him with a massive amount of experience points for taking down such a high-tier threat. But the victory feels entirely hollow as the dust clears. Novice rushes over to Claire's side, only to find that the lethal venom has already done its work, leaving Park devastated over the loss of their ally. The worst monsters aren't the ones hiding in the forest, they're the ones giving the orders. Staring at his fallen friend, Novice's grief twists into pure, cold fury, and he swears to hunt down Taxon and make the corrupt leader pay in blood. Realizing brute force won't scratch the Spider Queen's armor, Novice changes his strategy. He calls on Chip, his mutated system companion, to scan the colossal beast for any structural weak points. Before Chip can pinpoint a vulnerability, the monster retaliates, unleashing a devastating barrage of acidic venom. Novice relies entirely on his vampiric agility, blurring through the toxic rain to close the distance. Chip finally highlights a faint cluster of unarmored joints near the creature's underbelly. Channeling his remaining mana, Novice compresses his blood skills into a single, hyperdense crimson blade. He launches himself upward, driving the blood blade straight into the beast's exposed weak spot. The impact shatters her thick hide, sending a deafening shriek echoing through the forest. A wounded beast is always the most dangerous, but Novice doesn't give her a chance to recover. He plunges his hands deep into the open wound, violently draining the Queen's immense life force to fuel his own body. Drained of her vitality, the colossal monster crashes to the ground, completely lifeless. The system immediately floods Novice's vision with notifications, rewarding him with a massive mountain of experience points and a rare boss drop. Park and the other surviving adventurers peek out from the rubble, staring in absolute disbelief. They just watched a single man obliterate a boss-tier threat that should have wiped out an entire guild. But our hero isn't celebrating just yet. As the adrenaline fades, his mind locks onto the real enemy, Taxon, the corrupt sub-guild leader who left him tied up as goblin bait. Novice gathers his battered allies and drops a bombshell, revealing the king's twisted plot to capture rogue system users and steal their powers. Taksin was just a pawn, but he still needs to pay for his betrayal. With the forest cleared and their strength slowly returning, the squad marches back toward the kingdom's borders. The hunt for monsters is over, but the hunt for Taksin has just begun. The colossal Spider Queen finally crashes to the ground dead, but the victory feels completely hollow. Novice collapses to his knees, his health bar blinking a critical red from burning through his own life force, while Park rushes over to Claire's lifeless body in tears. Inside his mind, Chip, his mutated system companion, blares a frantic warning. Novice's vampire core is rapidly destabilizing from the massive overexertion, and if he doesn't consume blood right this second, his existence will literally shatter. But before he can even catch his breath, a slow, mocking clap echoes through the destroyed forest. Taksin and his squad of corrupt adventurers step out of the shadows. The treacherous sub-guild leader had returned to collect Novice's corpse, only to find the ultimate jackpot, a dead boss monster and a completely helpless target. Realizing he can steal Novice's system powers right here and now, Taksin orders his men to move in for the kill. Park bravely steps in front of our hero to defend him, but Taksin just scoffs and swats the low-level adventurer aside like a fly. Sometimes survival means crossing a line you can never come back from. With Taksin's blade swinging down to end his life, Novice realizes human blood won't be enough to save him this time. He reaches out his trembling hand and plunges it straight into the Spider Queen's fresh corpse. Using the absolute limits of his vampiric abilities, Novice forcibly drains the monster's corrupted, venomous essence directly into his own veins. The violent surge of monstrous energy instantly repairs his crumbling core, mutating his aura into something pitch black and terrifying. As Novice slowly rises to his feet, Taksin's smug smile vanishes. He just realized he isn't the hunter anymore, he's the prey. Novice clutches Claire's bloodstained diary, and as he reads through her final entries, the dark truth of his vampiric transformation finally comes to light. The king wasn't just hunting rogue system users to steal their powers, he was using their drained life force to engineer monstrous mutations. The diary reveals that Claire and her fellow paladins were secretly sent to wipe out these abominations, only to be betrayed by the crown and used as test subjects themselves. Her notes explain that Novice's vampire abilities were a direct result of this twisted royal experiment. But there is no time to mourn. From the depths of the cavern, a desperate cry for help echoes out. Park is still alive, but he is helplessly suspended in the air, tightly bound in the queen's residual webbing while a sharp blade suddenly pierces his hand. Memories of the Paladin's brutal last stand flood Novice's mind as he watches bright energy blasts tear through the cavern. He realizes the nightmare didn't end with the Spider Queen. Armored hands clash in the darkness as Novice charges forward to intercept the ambush. The queen might be dead, but her mutated, red-eyed offspring are swarming the cave, and our hero is ready to unleash absolute hell to make sure he doesn't lose another friend today. As Novice grips the diary, the nightmare of the battle replays in his mind. He remembers Claire getting trapped in the Spider Queen's sticky webbing, completely immobilized. As the monster lunged in for the kill, Novice had blasted forward, smashing into the beast to intercept the fatal strike. Burning his own health, he unleashed a vicious blood slash, tearing into the monster's hide. Watching from the sidelines, Park was completely stunned by his power, but Claire knew something was different. She had fought alongside Novice for years, but she had never seen him use these dark, blood-based skills before. Despite the relentless assault, Novice realized his basic blood claws barely dented the queen's massive health pool, and his ultimate blood cannon was too risky to use. Activating his blood control, he accepted a harsh truth: he was no longer a holy paladin. He didn't have his old skills anymore, so he couldn't fight the same way. Embracing his new vampiric nature, he spawned massive whips of pure blood energy, lashing out at the towering shadow of the beast. Poisonous green venom splattered everywhere, but Novice didn't hold back for a single second, throwing his entire arsenal at the monster. As Novice steps into the gritty, criminal-infested streets of Elysia, the nightmare of the Spider Queen still replays on a loop in his mind. He remembers the brief glimmer of hope when his squad watched him actually draw blood from the colossal beast, thinking they might just survive the ambush. In his memories, he's throwing himself back into the fray, his vampiric aura exploding with every desperate strike. But Claire was the only one who saw the fatal flaw in his strategy. She realized that his relentless onslaught was tearing his own body apart. Chip's frantic warnings still echo in his ears, alerting him that his reckless blood skills were draining his health down to a critical 34%. The monster was simply too fast, barraging him with attacks and leaving him absolutely no room to build momentum for a finishing blow. Then comes the memory that shattered his world. A deafening roar shakes the battlefield, and Claire's horrified scream cuts through the chaos just as Park is brutally impaled and crushed beneath the rubble, leaving Novice paralyzed by his own weakness. Driven half-mad by the sight of his dying friends, the memory ends with Novice pushing past his absolute limits. He commands Chip to activate his blood claws, launching into the final, suicidal charge that would ultimately cost Claire her life. Novice combines his blood claws and blood control, diving into the fray to unleash a devastating barrage on the monster. But pushing his vampiric abilities to the absolute limit comes with a massive cost. His health rapidly plummets down to just 18%. He tries to trigger his ultimate blood cannon to finish the grotesque creature off, but the system locks him out. The skill requires at least half his health to activate, and he's bleeding out too fast. While Novice struggles with his failing health, Claire pushes herself back into the fight, gripping her knife with furious determination. But the Spider Queen instantly shifts its aggro, and Novice screams her name as the beast lunges. The monster unleashes a brutal, blinding strike that sends Claire flying. She crashes into the debris, coughing up blood, realizing in a terrifying instant that her life is flashing before her eyes. Just as the beast opens its horrific maw for the killing blow, Novice blurs across the battlefield and snatches her out of the air. Cradled in his arms, Claire chokes on her own blood, barely able to speak his name. He begs her to stay quiet, swearing that they are inches away from victory and that he refuses to let her die. But Claire can see right through him. She knows his energy is completely tapped out. Gripping his clothes with the last of her strength, she makes a desperate, heartbreaking offer. She tells him to use her blood. Novice freezes in absolute shock, his mind racing as he wonders how she could possibly know his darkest secret. As the mystical ship sails toward the hidden island, Novice's mind violently snaps back to the nightmare he just escaped, the exact moment he lost Claire. In the climax of their battle against the Spider Queen, his health plummets to a critical 18 points, completely locking him out of his devastating blood cannon skill since it requires at least half his vitality to activate. The monstrous arachnid doesn't give them a single second to breathe. It lunges with terrifying speed, smashing into Novice and sending both him and the wounded Claire flying across the cavern, prompting Chip to scream out a warning that one more hit like that will be fatal. Cornered and completely out of options, Claire looks at him with blood streaming down her face and makes the ultimate sacrifice, begging him to drain her blood. Novice hesitates, knowing that pulling blood from scattered corpses is far too slow, but taking it directly from his dying friend is the only way either of them has a chance. With the Spider Queen tearing through the cavern and shattering the ground to finish them off, Novice makes the agonizing choice. He absorbs Claire's life force, instantly recovering 65 health points and pushing him right past the threshold he desperately needs. His blood cannon is finally unlocked. Fueled by absolute rage and the tragic sacrifice of his closest ally, Novice locks onto the screeching monster, gathering a massive surge of crimson energy to blast the beast straight to hell. Novice unleashes a devastating blood cannon, pouring every ounce of his chaotic red energy and purple lightning into the blast. The massive beam rips through the cavern, tearing into the Spider Queen and sending the monstrous creature crashing into the rocky walls. System confirms the kill, rewarding our guy with a massive 2400 XP and bumping him straight to level 15 with 6 new stat points. But the victory is short-lived when Novice turns around to find Claire lying in a massive pool of her own blood. She's fading fast, and panic sets in as he realizes she might actually die because of him. Right on cue, the system triggers an emergency option, offering Novice the chance to infect Claire with the vampire virus by injecting his blood. Chip chimes in, urging him to take the risk to save her life, but just as Novice reaches out, Claire weakly grabs his hand to stop him. Through a bloody smile, she reveals that she already knows his secret, having noticed the signs he'd been trying to hide. She admits she didn't want to believe it at first, but assures Novice that even though he isn't human anymore, he's definitely no monster. The system warning that the transformation would cause her agonizing pain, Claire begs him not to turn her into a creature of the night. With her final breath, she tells him that if he wants to uncover the truth about his kind, he needs to find a hidden diary in the top drawer of her room. Novice desperately pleads with her to stay, but the system window flashes red. The time limit has expired and Claire is gone. A cold system notification confirms the worst: Claire is dead and his vampire conversion has completely failed. Novice holds her lifeless body in the dark, web-filled cavern, his spirit entirely shattered. He breaks down, sobbing that he was supposed to protect her. Even Chip, his mutated system companion, weeps helplessly beside them in the gloom. But grief quickly hardens into resolve. Realizing his powers failed because he doesn't understand his own cursed blood, Novice vows to track down Claire's hidden diary and uncover the truth of what he really is. Later, under a dramatic sunset, Novice buries Claire in a quiet graveyard. Kneeling before her headstone, the guilt eats him alive as he confesses that he failed his friends once again. He screams in pure frustration. Chip tries to comfort our hero, reminding him that he did absolutely everything he could, but Novice bitterly admits that his best just wasn't enough. With no other options, Novice sets his sights on the diary, knowing it's their only real lead. He and Chip set off into the dark forest, determined to figure out what they've become. Following the clues, Novice arrives at a quiet village under the cover of night. A terrified town guard hears his heavy footsteps and immediately regrets taking the spooky night shift, convinced he's about to get murdered. Ignoring the trembling man, our cloaked hero steps up to a heavy wooden door, ready to demand some answers. Novice steps into his dimly lit room, which is so eerily quiet that Chip immediately starts freaking out about ghosts. Novice just smirks, reminding the little system companion that he's basically a ghost himself. Checking the desk just like the clues promised, Novice opens a drawer and finds exactly what he came for, Claire's diary. But holding the heavy book in his hands, a part of him dreads what dark secrets he might actually uncover inside. Meanwhile, out on the cobblestone streets, his old ally Park is losing his mind. He's been searching endlessly, but with Claire and Novice both missing, he's hitting a total dead end. Suddenly, he spots a familiar white-haired figure in a cloak and sprints after him, lunging to grab his friend's shoulder. But he grasps at empty air. The alley is completely deserted. Gripping his hair in total despair, Park wonders if he's chasing phantoms, questioning if he should just give up and return to the order. Finding a quiet spot in the woods, Novice finally opens the thick, handwritten book. The diary pulls him straight into Claire's past. Years ago, she lived in the seaport of Elysia, a coastal town crawling with the worst kind of criminals, and she was one of them. Exhausted but grinning, a young Claire ducks into an alleyway, clutching a fresh haul of stolen coins and jewelry. Stealing from thugs comes with a heavy price. The men she just robbed track her down, furious that she stabbed one of their crew to make off with the loot. Back then, Claire stole just to survive, thinking she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The thugs corner her, promising to take back their cash and extract a little extra payback. Refusing to go down without a fight, Claire draws her blade and lunges, but the massive thug easily intercepts her strike and violently throws her aside. Ignoring the sneers of the aristocratic vampires, Novice retreats to dive into a mysterious journal he acquired. The diary recounts a brutal memory where a group of thugs cornered the young author, ready to make her pay for crossing the wrong people. But before they could strike, a stranger in a dark cloak intervened, obliterating the attackers with devastating blasts of pink energy. Stranger ordered the girl to run, but as the cloaked figure turned, the author caught sight of glowing red eyes, a vampire. Instead of fleeing, the girl became fascinated by the strong, mysterious woman who saved her life. She followed the vampire everywhere, and surprisingly, the creature allowed it, even offering a comforting hand during the girl's darkest moments. Obsessed with the vampire's power, speed, and absolute freedom, the girl begged to be turned, believing it was the only way to change her miserable life. Amused by her relentless enthusiasm, the dark-haired vampire finally agreed to show her the true reality of their existence under the moonlight. But the dream quickly shattered into a nightmare. The journal entries grow frantic, describing horrifying demonic shadows and the gruesome reality of what vampires truly do to their prey. Terrified by the brutal, merciless slaughter she witnessed, the girl abandoned her wish, realizing she never wanted to become a monster. Back in the present, Novice flips through the battered document, trying to decipher the abrupt and panicked end to the entry. Chip, perched on Novice's shoulder, casually remarks that being a vampire still seems pretty cool to him. But Novice knows the author already understood they needed blood to survive, meaning whatever she saw that night was far more terrifying than simple feeding, and he realizes they are about to find out exactly what that horror is. While navigating the Academy's grueling politics, Novice hasn't forgotten his main goal, and a clue from Claire's diary leads him and Chip to a massive, bustling port town. With so much ground to cover, the mutated bat wonders how they'll ever track down the leads they need. Novice figures the best place to start is a local tavern, knowing that travelers always trade secrets over drinks and that it's exactly the kind of establishment Claire would have investigated. He spends some time asking around the crowded bar, but despite the heavy chatter, none of the locals have any useful information to offer. Just as he's about to give up, a loud toast catches his attention, and his eyes lock onto a group of adventurers celebrating a massive payout. Novice's blood instantly boils, realizing it's Alfred and his party, the exact same cowards who abandoned him and his guildmates in the dungeon. Memories of the betrayal flood his mind, reminding him that their cowardly retreat is the only reason his team was left for dead and why Claire is gone forever. The laughing adventurers suddenly freeze when they spot Novice sitting in the shadows, completely dumbfounded that he somehow survived the slaughter. But instead of showing guilt, Alfred swaggers over and mockingly calls him the lucky survivor. Alfred is completely unbothered when Novice confirms that the rest of his friends are dead. The arrogant leader just smiles and brushes the tragedy off as the harsh reality of an adventurer's life, casually asking for no hard feelings. But the friendly act drops instantly as Alfred leans in, threatening Novice to keep his mouth shut about their desertion since he's completely alone now with no one to protect him. As the scumbags walk away laughing, Chip whispers that these are exactly the kind of people who deserve to be bitten. and with Novice's system suddenly flashing a critical warning that he only has 8 hours left to consume blood, Alfred's party might have just signed their own death warrants. The ticking system timer warning him that he only has 8 hours left to consume blood, Novice realizes he has the perfect targets to solve his starvation problem. Slipping away to a nearby port town, he tracks down the corrupt adventurers who betrayed him and left him for dead. He finds them drunkenly celebrating and stumbling toward a local brothel, quietly blocking their path in a dark alleyway. The men recognize their former E-rank porter and immediately burst out laughing, bragging that even completely drunk, they can squash him. But they have no idea they're dealing with a vampire now. Before the smug armored guy can even finish his sentence, Novice blitzes him, summoning a blade of raw red energy and smashing right through his defenses. As the adventurers scramble back in absolute terror, they stammer out, demanding to know how he survived the dungeon. Novice coldly reveals that he used the blood of his fallen friends to slaughter the giant spider himself. He admits that a month ago he would have just reported them to the guild, but the man they betrayed is dead, and right now he needs them for a very different purpose. Using his blood magic, Novice hoists the terrified leader upside down by his ankles. The man pathetically begs for his life, offering to hand over all the reward money from the spider egg, but Novice tells him that betrayal is only paid back in blood. Under the glow of a crimson moon, our hero ruthlessly massacres the squad, draining them to fuel his vampiric powers. After checking his system to see the massive stat boosts from their blood types, Chip asks what he wants to do with the leftover bodies since he usually just drinks and vanishes. But Novice isn't about to waste free resources. He orders his system companion to bust out the empty potion bottles, planning to harvest every last drop. Despite securing the key, Novice has a different objective in mind. When Chip warns him that their collected blood will go bad in just 14 hours, Novice reveals he has no intention of storing it. Instead, he smashes his remaining bottles and drenches himself and the surrounding area in fresh blood. It's a massive waste of precious resources, but Novice is betting that the heavy scent will draw out the monsters hiding in the city. His reckless gamble pays off instantly. A shadowy female vampire appears under the red moon, furious and demanding to know if he's trying to get himself killed. Chip cheers that the plan worked, but Novice is completely on edge, staring down the kind of creature that ruined his life and turned him into an abomination. However, he quickly realizes she isn't part of the group that originally attacked him, even though she's wearing the exact same uniform. The woman scolds him for his foolishness, moving with a blinding speed that leaves Novice realizing he's completely outmatched. Trying to flip the script, he asks if she's the female vampire mentioned in Claire's diary, the one in Elysia who mysteriously spared her life. The vampire stays dead silent, taking a slow step forward. Novice readies his weapon and braces for a fatal strike, but in a blinding flash of red energy, she completely vanishes, leaving him alone in the blood-soaked streets. Before Novice can even recover from the pain of the sun resistance vial, a purple blast of energy slams into him. He barely blocks the follow-up strike, shocked to realize his attacker's bare hands are as hard as his own sword. It's a brutal wake-up call. This vampire isn't holding back, and she definitely doesn't share his soft spot for humans. The assailant steps out of the shadows, revealing a dark-haired vampire radiating intense red aura. She taunts him, eager to test just how much strength a low-ranker like him can muster, and as she charges, Chip screams a desperate warning. They clash violently, but she completely overpowers our guy, sweeping his legs and knocking him into the dirt while shaving off 30 health points in an instant. Novice struggles to catch his breath, his hands trembling as he realizes she isn't just terrifyingly fast, she hits like an absolute truck. But Novice isn't one to just roll over and die. Grinning through the blood, he channels his own dark energy and lunges back into the fight, forcing her to actually put some effort into parrying his relentless strikes. She seems genuinely surprised that he even knows how to use basic combat skills. Still, Novice is sweating bullets, his instincts screaming that if he drops his guard for a fraction of a second, she'll take his head clean off. As they lock blades again, she leans in dangerously close, her eyes narrowing as she notices something off about his fighting style. Massive explosive counterattack sends Novice flying, wiping out another 50 health points in a single devastating blow. Chip begs him to run, but Novice fires back a basic level 1 blood swipe just to buy some breathing room. The girl effortlessly brushes it aside, mocking his basic moves before putting the pieces together. She doesn't recognize his face, meaning he has to be a turned vampire, not a pureblood elite. The mysterious elite woman summons a massive glowing red scythe, declaring that Novice has broken the vampire's code. Since his existence as a turned vampire is highly illegal, she sentences him to death on the spot. Novice is absolutely stunned. He's faced legendary beasts and seen mythical weapons before, but the sheer aura radiating from her blade is completely off the charts. His system companion, Chip, casually jokes about when they'll get gear that cool, but our hero is just focused on surviving the next 5 minutes. Gripping his sword, Novice kicks into high gear, using his speed to dodge and weave through her strikes. but the elite vampire just smirks, mocking his desperate evasions as completely pointless before unleashing a devastating shockwave. The impact shatters the ground, throwing up a massive cloud of dust and debris. For a split second, the woman thinks she obliterated him, but as the smoke clears, she intercepts him midair, coldly whispering that he should have just run away. She grabs Novice right by the throat, slamming him down as blood splatters across the battlefield. Towering over him with her scythe, she arrogantly offers him the chance to speak his final words. But instead of begging, Novice just flashes a bloody grin and reveals a terrifying twist. The blood covering them isn't his, and his health is already rapidly regenerating. Pushing his powers to the absolute limit, Novice unleashes a massive, chaotic explosion of dark energy known as the Blood Cannon. The devastating attack obliterates the surrounding area, but the sheer force of the skill severely backfires, draining his health down to a critical 17 points. Catching his breath, Chip points out how lucky our hero is to have saved a spare blood vial from the earlier trials. Novice agrees, admitting that while blood loses its potency after a few hours, keeping a reserve is the only thing saving him from having to hunt humans every single day. He downs the vial to recover his strength, casually mentioning to his winged companion that it is a shame they had to kill their attacker without getting any real answers, but Novice celebrates way too early. Before he can even blink, a hand violently snatches him by the hair from behind and slams him to the dirt. The dust clears to reveal Sauron, the elite vampire enforcer, completely unfazed by his ultimate attack. Taking another brutal hit that drops his health into the single digits, Novice stares up in absolute shock. He realizes his blood cannon did not leave a single scratch on her, leaving him terrified of just how monstrously strong these high-ranking vampires really are. Desperate and completely out of options, our hero screams that he never asked for any of this and never wanted to be turned into a monster. He begs Sauron to tell him if there is a way to reverse the transformation, pleading for his humanity. Sauron is secretly impressed that a newly turned fledgling could unleash such a powerful attack, wondering who could have possibly sired him. But her duty is absolute, and she coldly informs him that the code demands the death of all illegal creations, crushing his spirit by revealing that a cure for vampirism simply does not exist. While Novice plots his revenge, the reality of his new life weighs heavily on him, echoing the chilling words of the mysterious red-eyed woman who first turned his world upside down. She had told him that to survive, he needed to completely abandon his past life and embrace his instincts as a creature of the night. She revealed that there was only one place where he could master his insatiable thirst, the elite vampire academy. Novice was terrified, silently wondering if this overwhelming predator would even let him walk away alive if he refused her offer. But then he remembered Claire, his brave ally who had sacrificed her own life so that he could escape the dungeon, and he refused to let her death be in vain. Clenching his fists, Novice pushed past his fear and demanded the woman take him to the academy, vowing to uncover the truth behind his cursed bloodline. Now, sailing across the sparkling sea toward their new nightmare, his mutated system companion, Chip, is still buzzing with disbelief that an entire school for vampires actually exists. Novice agrees, but he's far more concerned with the mysterious woman's true motives for bringing them along in the first place. He remembers the sheer, crushing power she displayed during their brief encounter, realizing that even in his prime as a paladin, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Checking his current stats, Novice sees he's only a level 15 blood manipulator with his abilities severely crippled in the sunlight, leaving him sweating at the thought of how many monsters out there could instantly wipe him out. And he doesn't have to wait long for an answer. A chilling voice suddenly whispers from right behind him, confirming his worst fears. The woman had closed the distance without triggering a single alarm in his senses. Novice's confidence takes a massive hit when the elite vampire Sauron appears silently behind him. Before he can even react, she effortlessly pins him by the neck, sending his little system companion Chip into a total panic. Sauron warns him that if he wants to survive the academy, he needs to get a lot stronger. She's casually holding a magical parasol that completely nullifies the sun's stat-having debuff, proving just how wide the power gap between them really is. But her real warning is about his bloodline. She reveals that vampire society is strictly divided between purebloods and those who were turned. Sauron explains that pureborn vampires despise the turned, viewing them as cheap knockoffs who cheated their way into power. Most turned vampires are just mass-produced pawns created to serve as loyal fodder for the noble families. Because of this, the prejudice is brutal, and Sauron bluntly warns Novice that if the elite students find out he used to be human, they won't just make his life hell, they'll outright kill him. Our hero starts sweating bullets, realizing he has absolutely no idea how to even act like a real vampire to keep his dangerous secret intact. Pointing out toward the ocean, Sauron shows him a massive fleet of ships arriving at the island. She explains that every single vampire must attend this academy, or they are officially branded as illegal rogues and hunted down. In fact, she admits that she almost chopped his head off when they first met because he looked exactly like an abandoned stray. The academy isn't just a school, it's the absolute center of their society, and Novice is about to walk right into the middle of a deadly political war zone. As the massive wooden ship sails across a glowing, turbulent sea, Novice's mind races with flashes of the brutal, bloody fights he's barely survived. He questions the true endgame of these vampires hiding in the shadows, and more importantly, whether he'll ever be able to control his own growing bloodlust. Suddenly, Chip and the other familiars start shrieking in absolute panic as the ship hurtles straight toward a jagged, rocky cliff. Novice braces for a deadly impact, but instead of shattering into a million pieces, the vessel phases right through the rock face like it isn't even there. Emerging under a breathtaking, starry purple sky, Novice realizes the cliff was a massive illusion spell, and their guide simply offers a knowing smile. As the glowing waters calm, a sprawling, magnificent Gothic city comes into view, a hidden sanctuary where the sun never rises, ready to welcome the new students. Stepping off the ship and taking in the towering architecture of the secret metropolis, Novice is completely blown away. He stares up at the shimmering skyline, struggling to process that an entire civilization exists completely cut off from the outside world. His red-eyed companion quickly nudges him, warning him to wipe the shock off his face before he outs himself as an oblivious newcomer. Chip floats up, sarcastically reminding our hero to actually start acting like a vampire for once, as they step into a bustling town square packed entirely with creatures of the night. But before the deathmatch kicks off, the story flashes back to the night Novice first arrived at the academy. Soren leads him through the massive crowds of vampires, but as they reach the towering entrance gates, she suddenly stops and tells him this is where they part ways. Novice is completely caught off guard, asking if she's really just dumping him here. Soren explains she has to enter with the elites, pointing him toward the assessment grounds for new recruits. She drops a crucial piece of world building. The academy takes in noble vampires who just turned 18 and humans who were turned. But here's the brutal catch: any turned vampire who doesn't graduate is hunted down as an illegal. Since Novice was wandering alone when they met, she figured his creator had abandoned him to die. He gives him one last piece of advice, noting that his young face is his best disguise, as noble families often hide their youth, meaning no one will question his origins. With a final pat on the shoulder, Soren wishes him luck, warning him that from this moment on, he's completely alone in this ruthless world. She walks away in her academy uniform. Novice realizes the only way he'll ever see his sponsor again is if he survives the brutal assessments ahead. Stealing his nerves, our hero pulls his tattered cloak tight and steps through the Gothic gates into the massive cathedral grounds. But as he marches in with the other recruits, he can't shake the creeping feeling that they're being watched. High above the courtyard, a mysterious man with white hair and glasses peers down at the fresh meat, hoping this year brings someone interesting, or at least someone worthy of their elite bloodline. As Jagdar's devastating purple lightning tears through him, Novice refuses to stay down. A dark aura flares around our hero as he locks eyes with his arrogant opponent, remembering the promise he made to himself when he first arrived. No matter what this academy throws at him, he is going to survive and rise to the top. Just a few days earlier, standing outside the grand Gothic gates of the real Vampire Academy, his mutated system companion Chip had been buzzing with excitement. The little bat threw out wild guesses about what the Academy's trials would be, wondering if they'd have to chug blood or stand in the sun, but Novice had just calmly told him they'd wait and see. Now that very trial is unfolding in the arena, and they aren't the only ones watching. High up in a grand, dimly lit hall, the elite clan heads are gathered to observe the new year's talent. A sharp-featured woman hopes to spot some skilled spellbinders, but a stern, traditionalist clan head scoffs, insisting that the direct bloodlines of the 10 families, like Jagdar, will always crush the competition. He adds that the academy is under massive pressure since so many of their kind have been dying on recent missions. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo through the hall, and a terrifying, shadowy figure steps into the doorway. The clan heads instantly rise and bow their heads in absolute submission. Taking his seat at the head of the table, the imposing leader delivers a strict order. They are to monitor every single student closely this year. He declares that they desperately need raw talent to replenish their ranks, and he doesn't care if that talent is a pureblood noble or a newly turned vampire like Novice. Meanwhile, across the academy grounds, elite vampire Soren is intercepted by her classmate Sophie. Noticing that Soren has been completely distracted since returning from the outside world, Sophie mercilessly teases her, asking if she found a boyfriend, and even jokes that Soren might be in a taboo relationship with a human who begs to have his blood drained. Soren ignores the wild fantasies and apologizes, revealing she is going to miss their first class as second-year students because she has just been summoned. Sophie complains that they were supposed to get special gifts today, but quickly softens. Acknowledging how stressful Soren's noble life must be, Sophie promises to cover for her with the teacher and secure her gift. As they part ways, Sophie winks and jokingly promises to keep her human boyfriend a secret. Soren dashes off into the night, deeply uneasy about being unexpectedly called away right before the semester starts. Her high-speed sprint brings her to a massive, heavily guarded Gothic mansion bearing her noble clan's crest, the place she reluctantly calls home. Far from the chaos of the arena, Soren, an elite vampire and the daughter of a prestigious family, arrives at her heavily guarded estate. She strides through the grand archways and down the sprawling red carpets of her ancestral home. Attendants immediately bow and welcome the young miss back, but Soren can barely hide her disgust for the place. She marches down the long, oppressive halls until she finally reaches her father's chambers. The clan head doesn't even offer a warm greeting, immediately scolding her for spending her entire break away from the family. He coldly warns her not to do anything that would embarrass their name, treating her more like a political asset than a daughter. Soren assures him she hasn't stepped out of line, but he launches into his usual lecture about their status as one of the 10 ruling vampire clans. He reminds her that her blatant desire to leave the island is already a stain on their reputation. Then, he drops a massive ultimatum. He only allowed her to leave because she promised it would make her stronger, and if she doesn't rank among the top 10 students this year, she will be permanently grounded on the island. The demand hits Soren like a physical blow, as the Academy's top 10 are absolute monsters with terrifying power. Still, hiding her rising panic under a mask of duty, she promises to do whatever it takes to survive the brutal climb to the top. While Jagdar lies completely unconscious on the arena floor, we learn exactly what was riding on this fight. Earlier, a stern clan leader had instructed a female vampire that many direct descendants were joining the Academy this year, including her arranged fiancé, Jagdar. She was ordered to keep an eye on the top-performing first years and ensure she maintained a good relationship with him. But as she walks the halls, she bitterly resents the life of a vampire. She hates being a slave to the clan's will, stripped of her freedom and forced to marry a man she didn't choose. Watching Novice from afar, she can't understand why anyone would willingly come to a place like this, and she wonders just how long our hero will actually survive. Meanwhile, Novice is standing in the Grand Academy Hall, completely overwhelmed by the massive crowd of vampires around him. He's sweating profusely, horrified by the sheer numbers and wondering just how much human blood this single room consumes every year. Chip jokes that the red and black Academy uniform actually suits him, but Novice feels physically sick just wearing the same clothes as the monsters he despises. Stakes hit even harder when Novice realizes that every single vampire in the hall is just a first-year student, leaving him terrified of how many actually exist in the world. Lost in his thoughts, he accidentally stares a bit too long at another student. The dark-skinned vampire notices and angrily snaps at him, asking if he's never seen a black vampire before. As the arena buzzes with the chaotic aftermath of the fight, a dark-skinned vampire with dreadlocks breaks the tension, playfully asking our hero if he's never seen a black vampire before. He quickly laughs it off, introducing himself as Styles. The two bump fists and Novice can't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. Styles' easygoing smirk reminds him a whole lot of his old adventure friend Sly. Styles points out that with the brutal Academy assessments looming over them, everyone in the courtyard is scrambling to make allies. Novice awkwardly introduces himself, admitting he's a bit on edge with everything going on. But Styles just flashes a sharp-toothed grin, telling our hero to stick close to him if he wants to survive the pressure. New Guy casually asks if Novice belongs to one of the noble bloodlines, sending our hero into a mild internal panic since he still has absolutely no clue how vampire society works. Assuming Novice is just a commoner like him, Styles explains the ultimate goal of the Academy. If you aren't born into one of the 10 great clans, you have to prove your talent so a clan head will personally recruit you. Novice realizes these clans operate exactly like adventurer guilds, and Styles confidently declares he's going to be the top pick. That confidence is instantly shattered by a new voice claiming the top spot is already taken. A striking girl with dark hair and red eyes steps up, bragging that the Moore clan will have no choice but to recruit her once they see her elite spellbinding skills. Styles leans in and whispers to Novice that pretty girls, especially spellbinders, are nothing but trouble, which immediately earns him a death glare when she snaps that she can hear every word. Meanwhile, high above the courtyard, the Academy instructors and clan representatives are secretly watching the students' every move through a glowing magical sphere. They use the Academy's bat familiars as hidden cameras to scout out potential recruits without tipping them off. However, one arrogant, scarred instructor scoffs at the whole process, coldly stating that anyone not born into a main clan is entirely worthless anyway. Watching the aftermath of the duel, the clan heads admit that every few years an outsider manages to surprise them, and Novice might just be this year's wild card. Meanwhile, back at the Academy, the new recruits are herded into a massive circular hall. An instructor with glasses and fangs barks for absolute silence, welcoming the fresh blood to their official assessment. He makes the Academy's brutal philosophy crystal clear. Here, strength rules all, and this test will determine their entire worth. Novice casually jokes to his system companion, Chip, that this school clearly doesn't care much about math. The instructor explains that based on their scores, everyone will be awarded one of 3 colored pins, though bottom feeders will still have a chance to climb the ranks later. He then points out the wristbands they were handed with their uniforms, crafted by elite spellbinders to measure their exact level of blood power. With a sinister smirk, he triggers the bands, sending a massive shockwave of energy rippling through the crowd as the devices power up. The hall immediately erupts into panic chatter as students check their scores, with low rankers already getting mocked by the elites. Amidst the chaos, Novice calmly checks his own glowing wristband, ready to see exactly where the system ranks his impossible strength. Once Novice and his friends are fully recovered, it's straight back to class for a new assessment. The instructor hands out special wrist devices that measure a student's blood strength on a scale of 1 to 10. But he warns them not to obsess over the score. It doesn't factor in combat experience or physical power, and the number can be trained and increased over time. Instantly, the students start comparing their ranks, and the classroom turns into a judgmental hierarchy. A girl with a respectable rank of 6 scoffs at a classmate who only scored a 3, while others try to hide their wrists to avoid the humiliation. Then the arrogant girl spots Novice's wrist device. It displays a pathetic 2. Disgusted that she even wasted her breath standing near him and his friends, she storms off, leaving them in the dust. Novice is just as confused as she is. Chip's system interface clearly states his blood aura strength is at a 5, and even details how consuming different blood types grants permanent stat boosts like sun resistance and decreased hunger. He wonders why the Academy's device is reading his power so incredibly low. Seeing Novice look down, Nomo throws an arm around him, telling him not to sweat it. He explains that they are both physical-based vampires, meaning their blood scores will naturally lag behind the snobby spellcaster vampires who rely purely on aura. This triggers a memory for Novice about the class selection cards, the physical Night Warrior and the spellcasting Scarlet Spellbinder. When he asks if there's a third vampire class, Nomo immediately shuts him down, calling it a useless path that no one ever takes. Nomo confidently assumes Novice is a physical brawler just like him, promising that physical types often grow up to be the strongest warriors in the clan. But internally, Novice starts to panic. He knows he isn't a physical vampire at all, leaving him wondering if he really is just pathetically weak compared to everyone else in the academy. Novice's attention is pulled away by a massive commotion as a group of elite vampires make a grand entrance. His friends warn him that 5 of the 10 direct clan descendants are participating in the academy this year, including heavy hitters like Bronk and Zen. They tell him straight up, if he wants to survive, he needs to get on their good side because crossing them is a guaranteed death sentence. Sweating, Novice realizes this academy is packed with threats that could make his life hell. When he asks if these descendants are the absolute strongest vampires around, his friends clarify that the only beings more powerful are the ancient clan founders themselves. Suddenly, Zen, one of the elite descendants, locks his piercing red eyes directly on Novice, sensing something different about him. But before the tension can escalate, a cheerful student named Lur-Ah enthusiastically waves them down, breaking the intense stare-down. Glaring at his own glowing bracelet, Novice figures out the Academy's twisted game. He realizes the public display of blood strength is completely rigged, specifically designed to humiliate the low ranks and put the highborn descendants on an untouchable pedestal. Before he can complain, a bespectacled instructor claps his hands to silence the massive crowd. With a wicked smirk, he announces that the first official assessment is finally beginning, and their immediate task is to form teams of 3. The bespectacled instructor addresses the sea of vampire cadets, announcing that the exact details of the assessment will remain a total mystery to prevent anyone from gaining an unfair advantage. He does drop one massive hint, though: the entire trial will be graded strictly on speed, meaning the fastest teams will secure the highest ranks. Whispers immediately break out among the crowd as students complain that the system is rigged. They assume the elite descendants will just group up to form an unstoppable super team, but others quickly point out the brutal reality of vampire politics. Since the descendants are obsessed with proving their absolute superiority over everyone, including each other, there's no way their massive egos would ever let them cooperate. The instructor claps his hands to cut through the chatter, explaining that real vampire missions are never solo runs, and surviving in the field means relying on a squad. Pulling out a golden pocket watch, he gives the cadets exactly 5 minutes to lock in their 3-man teams, and the stadium instantly erupts into chaos as students scramble to find the strongest partners. Nomo and Styles instantly latch onto Novice, and while Chip complains that they just assumed they'd be teaming up, Novice doesn't mind. He knows perfectly well that after his insane stunt in the arena, plus his extremely low rank, nobody else in this academy is going to risk teaming up with him anyway. Novice tries to prove himself wrong by casually approaching another student, but the moment the cadet spots the red number 2 glowing on Novice's rank bracelet, they turn their back and walk away without a second thought. Nomo and Styles try their luck too, pitching themselves as the ultimate dream team, but they get violently shoved aside by higher-ranking students who refuse to be dragged down by a squad of rank 2s. Defeated, the trio regroups in the courtyard, realizing that since nobody likes Nomo and Styles and Novice is a complete social outcast, they are officially stuck with each other for the deadliest exam of their lives. After surviving the crushing aura display, the students are given just 5 minutes to form teams of 3 for their first assessment. Novice and Styles scan the crowd for a final member, knowing the elites won't give them the time of day. They spot a nervous kid and ask him to join, but the boy is completely shocked, warning them that his blood strength is only a pathetic level 1. Novice just smiles and shows his own bracelet, revealing his rank is only 2. Styles runs over, hoping they found a powerhouse, but immediately sighs when he sees the scrawny recruit. He asks if the kid is at least a spellcaster, since every trio needs magic support, but the boy awkwardly admits he's a physical vampire. Realizing beggars can't be choosers, Styles swallows his frustration and declares that the 3 of them will just have to be the dream team. The kid introduces himself as Nomo, swearing he'll do his absolute best not to drag them down. The trio bumps fists to seal the deal. Chip, Novice's system companion, scoffs at how cheesy they're acting for a bunch of strangers, but Novice knows that in a cutthroat academy like this, they have to watch each other's backs. Time is up, and the instructor announces that everyone whose bracelet lights up will take the assessment first. Instantly, a massive blue portal erupts in the center of the hall, and the chosen students are ordered to step inside to discover the true nature of their test. While the rest of the crowd murmurs in confusion, the first trio marches straight into the swirling energy field. The oppressive opening ceremony out of the way, the academy wastes no time kicking off the very first assessment. The first group of students steps into a swirling blue portal, but the results are an absolute bloodbath. Moments later, they stumble back out of the energy sphere, their bodies battered, burned, and pierced with arrows. The instructors and spectators are left in stunned silence, quickly realizing this test is a brutal death trap. As the next groups are ordered inside, the horror show only continues. Team after team gets spat back out covered in blood, too injured to even speak about what happened inside. Watching from the sidelines, Styles realizes this isn't just a fluke, guessing the portal is rigged with high-level monsters or deadly traps. Beside him, Nomo starts to completely panic, terrified of what they are about to face. Soon enough, strange purple symbols light up the floor, signaling that it's finally their turn. As they step up to the glowing archway, Styles tries to lighten the mood, joking that they just need to clear it faster than the elite students who looked down on them earlier. But for Novice, the stakes are entirely different. Stealing his nerves for his true first step as a vampire, he leads his friends straight into the mist. They are instantly teleported into a pitch-black courtyard facing a massive, imposing stone gateway. Nomo immediately freaks out, convinced they've already failed the assessment, but Styles tells him to calm down since they just need to walk toward the doors. But before they can even take a step, Novice hears a mechanical click in the darkness. He screams for his team to watch out just as a massive, glowing blue energy slash rips through the shadows straight for their heads. The trio suddenly realizes why the previous competitors looked like pincushions as a massive barrage of arrows rains down from the ceiling. Styles takes a brutal hit to the shoulder, and Nomo yells that they can't just stand there, they need to push forward to the exit. For Novice, this deadly trap is just a walk in the park, as dodging blades and projectiles was his daily routine back in his Paladin days. He weaves through the onslaught without taking a single scratch, pulling his friends out of the line of fire. Styles notices Novice's flawless footwork and realizes this physical assessment is perfectly tailored for combat-heavy vampires like them. They finally reach the massive gate at the end of the hall, panting and covered in minor wounds. Nomo brushes off his injuries, reminding them that vampire healing will patch them right up, and urges Novice to push the door open. With his mutated navigator chip hovering nearby, Novice shoves the glowing gates apart, clearing the first brutal test. Inside, they find an ethereal hall filled with hundreds of floating blue orbs, each containing a key. They spot a massive lock on the next door and quickly deduce they need to find the correct key hidden among the spheres. But before they can grab one, rival students lunge from the shadows to steal their prizes, turning the puzzle into an all-out brawl. Nomo manages to snatch an orb, shatters the crystal, and immediately jams the key into the lock to see if they got lucky. The trio faces their next challenge, a room swarming with hundreds of floating orbs, only one of which holds the correct key to the exit. Nomo groans in frustration after a failed guess triggers a wave of pain, while Styles mutters that they really could use a spellcaster to track down the right one. But Novice doesn't need magic when he has Chip. The little imp fires up the system's targeting, instantly isolating the single correct green orb hidden among the fakes. Novice shatters it and snatches the golden key, while Chip smugly flutters around, demanding to be praised as the greatest system companion ever. Novice casually unlocks the heavy door and flashes a grin, asking his friends if they're coming. Nomo and Styles can only stare in disbelief, completely unaware of the system, and deciding that Novice must just be their ultimate lucky charm. Stepping through a glowing portal, the group enters a grand hallway blocked by a massive magical circle. Just ahead of the barrier sits a stone pedestal holding 9 vials of blood. Wanting to pull his weight, Styles volunteers to test the barrier, but the second he touches the glowing runes, a violent magical shock blasts his hand. He recoils in agony, warning the others that the energy burns like pure sunlight and could easily kill them before they reach the other side. Looking at the pedestal, Styles guesses the blood vials are meant to heal them through the brutal crossing, but Novice spots a catch. A handwritten note warns that they can only choose 3 vials, and the moment they do, the rest will vanish. Nomo and Styles stress over how to solve the puzzle, but Novice just smirks as his eyes glow with system energy. While the other cadets have to risk their lives guessing the academy's traps, his system is proving to be an absolute cheat code for the entire assessment. Novice stares at the 9 vials of blood provided for the trial, realizing his system is giving him a massive advantage. While the others are guessing, his interface tells him exactly what each blood type does, like B-positive increasing sun resistance, so he knows exactly what to take. His friends, Nomo and Styles, are completely in the dark, wondering if they should just give all 9 vials to their fastest member to carry them through the sun spell. Nomo gets impatient and reaches for a random bottle, wanting to just get the trial over with. But Novice stops him, suggesting they split the vials evenly so everyone has a fair shot at surviving the crossing. He quickly snatches his 3 vials, but his choice is anything but random. Chip, his system companion, immediately calls him out for hogging all the sun resistance blood. Novice knows he needs to consume new blood types to permanently boost his stats and isn't about to pass up the opportunity, while Nomo naively assumes all the vials are identical anyway. With their blood potions in hand, the trio steps up to the massive magical doorway and charges headfirst into the trial. Instantly, they are engulfed in a blinding, golden light as the assessment begins. They are hit with a brutal artificial sunlight spell, and Novice immediately gets system warnings that his health and stats are plummeting. Chip realizes this magical light is actually far deadlier than the real sun, and Nomo starts screaming in agony as his skin begins to burn. Back at the Academy's brutal assessment, the artificial sunlight is burning Novice alive, but he refuses to leave his squad behind. Taking a massive gamble, he pulls out a vial of red resistance liquid and downs the whole thing. The potion triggers a violent reaction, flooding his body with dark energy as system alerts blow up his vision. Agony rips through his mind, but instead of pushing forward to the finish line, he turns back for his struggling teammates. Lunging back into the danger zone, Novice physically grabs his squadmates by the collars, determined to drag them across the finish line himself. His friends are stunned that he is willingly absorbing the intense burning pain just to carry them. One of the other cadets angrily accuses Novice of only helping out of guilt for hogging the resistance vials. But Novice knows the truth. Even though he sacrificed his humanity to become a vampire, he still refuses to abandon the honorable code of his old Paladin order. With a final, desperate push, Novice launches them all through a glowing blue energy barrier, crashing onto the safe grounds of the finish line. An instructor approaches, casually congratulating the exhausted trio on surviving the assessment before immediately calling in the next group. As the other teams trickle in, the horrific reality of the trial sets in. Some groups return missing members, completely shattered by the final stretch. Hearing the other vampires laugh off the casualties as a normal occurrence, Novice finally understands Soren's warning about the Academy's absolute disregard for their lives. A tall, bespectacled instructor steps up with a sinister grin to announce the end of the first phase. He reveals that their wristbands are about to light up, ranking every surviving group based on exactly how fast they cleared the deadly gauntlet. The Academy announces the results of the recent assessment, and at first, everything goes exactly as the crowd expects. Elite descendants Zen and Bronk take the top 2 spots, leaving the rest of the high-ranking cadets to smugly assume they've secured the remaining top positions. But when the board flashes the third-place winners, the entire hall erupts in shock. It's Novice and his low-ranking friends. Our hero groans, realizing his plan to stay under the radar is completely ruined by this massive public announcement. This unprecedented upset pushes Jagdar down to 4th place, and the arrogant elite is absolutely furious. As a direct descendant of the Marquis clan, he has never placed outside the top 3 in his entire life, and he swears to uncover whatever trick these nobodies used to cheat him out of his glory. The rest of the cadets are just as baffled, wondering if Novice's team is secretly backed by a powerful clan. But after scrutinizing the low-rank numbers on their wrists, the elites laugh it off, convincing themselves that our guy just got incredibly lucky. Watching through their crystal ball, the cloaked assessors aren't buying that Novice's flawless run was just a fluke. They suspect our white-haired hero possesses some kind of sixth sense, but they agree that tomorrow's trials will expose his true limits. An instructor officially calls an end to the first phase, ordering everyone to follow the assistants to the dorms. As the students shuffle down the hall, Jagdar shoots Novice a lethal glare, absolutely furious that a lower-class nobody is stealing the spotlight. The assistants hand out random room keys, laying down a strict rule. Anyone caught leaving their dorm before tomorrow will be instantly disqualified. Novice draws room 506, realizing he's been separated from the others and placed on a completely different floor. Before they split up, Nomo and Styles bow to Novice, thanking him for carrying them into the top 3 and putting the teacher's eyes on them. But Chip, Novice's demonic system companion, pops up with a grim reminder. Soren explicitly warned them to keep a low profile, and this is the exact opposite. To show their gratitude, his friends hand Novice a glowing green pendant. They explain that while their family isn't rich, they run a small jewelry shop and wanted him to have their best work as a token of loyalty. Before they part ways for the night, Styles hands Novice a custom-made pendant as a token of gratitude, mentioning his family runs a modest jewelry shop. Novice gladly accepts the gift, and the friends head off to get some rest. Back in his dorm, Novice collapses onto his bed, completely drained from the day's events. Chip pops out, buzzing with curiosity about their next assessment, but Novice quickly grounds him. He reminds his companion that they are only at the academy for one reason, to learn how to control his volatile blood powers, and he has no intention of staying here forever. As the hours pass and the entire academy falls into a deep slumber, a sinister presence breaches the dorms. A shadowy figure creeps down the wooden halls, stopping at room 203. With a subtle use of magic, the lock clicks open and the red-eyed intruder slips quietly inside. The silhouette looms over a peacefully sleeping Styles. Without making a sound, shadowy hands plunge downward, suffocating and ambushing the unsuspecting student before he can even wake. Meanwhile, in another room, Nomo is wide awake, his adrenaline still pumping after their team managed to secure third place. Just as he decides to get up to grab a drink, he freezes in absolute terror. A dark figure suddenly materializes from the shadows of his room, flashing a razor-sharp, menacing grin and warning him not to make a single sound. But the underdog team's sudden rise puts a massive target on their backs. The arrogant elite Jagdar corners one of Novice's friends, demanding to know exactly how they cheated the recent assessment to secure a top 3 spot. When the terrified student refuses to speak, Jagdar doesn't hesitate to wrap a shadow-infused grip around his throat. Moments later, another elite student steps into the dimly lit room, his hands dripping with fresh blood. Jagdar asks if he managed to beat any useful information out of his own captive. The lackey admits he might have pushed a little too hard, complaining that the weakling just cried and begged without spilling a single secret. Disgusted by their garbage fighting skills, the elites had mercilessly battered the lower-ranked students with dark energy blasts, absolutely convinced that such filthy blood could never pass a test fairly. Tossing aside his bloody rag, Jagdar realizes they are wasting their time on the sidekicks. He orders his partner to stand guard back on their floor, declaring that he will deal with the ringleader himself. Marching down the corridor, the furious elite stops dead in his tracks right in front of room 506, Novice's door. Just as Jagdar reaches for the handle of Novice's room, a voice calls out from the shadows, warning him to back off. He turns to find Soren, an elite vampire and his own fiancée, standing in the hallway. She reminds him that second years have no business sneaking around the first-year dorms. Playing it cool, Soren claims she was assigned guard duty to catch rule breakers, but offers to turn a blind eye this one time because of their relationship. Still, she warns him that if he pushes it, even she won't be able to protect him from the academy's strict laws. Jagdar scoffs, claiming he was just curious, but his pride can't take the disrespect. He grabs her cloak and snarls a brutal threat. If she ever tries to use this incident against him, he'll rip her head off, fiancé or not. With that charming goodbye, he storms off down the hall. Once he's gone, Soren lets out a massive sigh of relief. She completely lied about guard duty. She actually sneaked in to check if Novice had survived the first stage. She's thrilled that the arrogant noble bought her excuse, but a dark realization quickly kills her mood. She wonders what Jagdar was really doing at Novice's door, and more importantly, why his hands were covered in fresh blood. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the assassination attempt he just slept through, Novice wakes up feeling well-rested. He looks out the window, confused that it's the next day but the sun hasn't risen. Chip, his mutated system companion, pops out to mock him, asking if he seriously wanted to be burned alive by the morning light. Realizing no instructors have come to collect them yet, Novice decides not to waste any time. He throws on his uniform and heads out to find Nomo and Styles, knowing they need to strategize and gather intel for the Deadly Forest survival exam that's coming next. Back at the dorms, Novice heads to Styles' room, hoping to talk things over before the next phase of the exam. He knocks on the door but gets no answer. Chip figures the guy is just a heavy sleeper, but Novice's heightened senses suddenly pick up on something else entirely. A metallic scent drifts through the cracks in the doorframe. Novice takes a deep breath and his blood runs cold. It's the unmistakable stench of fresh blood, and it's pouring out from inside his friend's room. Wasting no time, Novice channels his raw vampiric aura into his leg and obliterates the heavy wooden door with a single, brutal kick. The dust clears, revealing an absolute nightmare. Styles is lying motionless on the floor, drowning in a massive pool of his own blood. Barely clinging to life, the battered student weakly wheezes out Novice's name. Seeing his loyal friend butchered pushes Novice over the edge. His eyes flare a murderous crimson as he drops to his knees, cradling Styles' mangled body and desperately begging him to stay awake. The assassins didn't just target our hero, they went after the people he cared about most. When the dust settles from the assassin fight, Novice finds Styles brutally beaten and bleeding out on the forest floor. He is absolutely devastated, sick to his stomach of watching everyone close to him get hurt while he survives. Suddenly, the system chimes in, warning that Styles is in critical condition and offering a brand new option, a blood bond. Novice remembers the system offering something similar when his old ally Claire died, and realizes this might be his one chance to rewrite history, so he grips his friend's bloody hand and accepts. Glowing purple runes and red energy engulf them as the bond successfully links their souls. The system asks if Novice wants to share his own health to save his connected ally, and Novice immediately sacrifices 50 of his own hit points, screaming at the system to just heal him. Instantly, steam rises from Styles' chest as his fatal wounds stitch themselves closed right before their eyes. Chip is completely mind-blown by the absurd healing skill, but Novice just smirks in relief as Styles finally opens his eyes, totally shocked to still be breathing. Styles confesses that he was tortured but swears he never leaked their secrets. He reveals that Jagdar, the arrogant elite from the Marquis clan, ambushed him to find out how their underdog team cleared the first exam so fast, but Styles refused to snitch because he was terrified Jagdar would come to kill Novice next. But true loyalty always comes with a terrifying price. Styles suddenly freezes, realizing that if Jagdar's hitmen came after him, they must have targeted Nomo too. Hearing this, Novice's blood runs cold, and the two of them instantly explode into a full sprint to save their other best friend before it's too late. Novice rushes back to his friends, only to find a complete bloodbath. Nomo lies motionless on the ground, brutally struck down during the chaos. Styles clutches his head in absolute despair, screaming at the unfairness of it all just when things were finally looking up for their underdog team. Refusing to lose another friend, Novice pushes his abilities to the absolute limit. He forces his aura into Nomo's fading body, sacrificing a chunk of his own life force to forge a blood bond. Dark energy swirls around them as the bond takes hold, stabilizing Nomo's vitals. Styles watches in sheer terror, demanding to know how Novice is using magic when he isn't a spellcaster. Novice knows this isn't something a normal vampire should be able to do, but right now, keeping his friend alive is the only thing that matters as he scoops him up and carries him out of the forest. Sometime later, back at the academy, the instructors examine Nomo's battered body. They declare it an absolute miracle that he's even breathing, warning that it will be a long time before he wakes up. Novice silently realizes that without his emergency blood bond, his friend would already be dead. As the surviving students gather on campus, academy guards block their path, ordering everyone to stay put until escorted. But Novice isn't in the mood to take orders. His eyes glow with a lethal red fury as he steps right up to the guards, demanding they get out of his way. Before the guards can retaliate, an academy official orders them to stand down, realizing Novice wants a word. Novice doesn't hold back. He openly declares that Jagdar orchestrated the assassination attempt out of pure jealousy over their assessment scores. Staring down the official, Novice demands to know exactly what the academy plans to do about the elite student who just tried to murder them. Novice confronts Soren about Jagdar's cowardly ambush, demanding justice for his injured friends, but the elite vampire brushes him off, demanding proof and suggesting a low-ranking student might just be lying to eliminate a noble. Soren coldly states that in their ruthless world, the weak only have themselves to blame. Hearing that, Novice lets out a dark laugh. If the Academy's rule is that the strong can crush the weak without consequence, he fully accepts it. He gives Soren a chilling warning. When he inevitably crosses the line and destroys the noble who did this, the Academy better not interfere. Later, the surviving candidates gather for the next phase, but the crowd is noticeably smaller, leaving only the elite top-ranked teams. Novice is practically vibrating with rage, desperate for a way to make Jagdar pay. Chip, his mutated system companion, grins from the sidelines, eagerly egging on his new bloodthirsty attitude. Soren takes the stage and announces that this phase will be a sparring tournament. But there's a brutal twist. A randomly selected student gets to challenge absolutely anyone they want. Hearing this, Novice's eyes lock onto his target. It's the perfect, legal chance to tear Jagdar apart in front of everyone. Realizing this upcoming tournament is his perfect chance to crush Jagdar without breaking any Academy rules, Novice gears up for the final test. The announcer declares there will be 14 matches in total, and before the students can even process the information, a massive teleportation circle engulfs them. They materialize in the center of a colossal arena, greeted by the deafening roar of thousands of spectators. Nomo and Styles are completely blown away, realizing that the entire academy, including the elite second-year students, has turned up to watch them fight. Up in the stands, the elite second-year vampire Soren watches the arena intently. Her friend relentlessly teases her about her fated love triangle, asking if she came to cheer for her forced fiancé Jagdar or the human boy she's taken a liking to. But Soren shuts down the joke, making it clear she's only here to see what Novice can do. The announcer then drops another bombshell. The audience isn't just made up of students. 3 of the academy's top professors are overseeing the event from their VIP seats. The hooded elders whisper among themselves, eager to watch the elite clan descendants, but they admit their real interest lies in the human wildcard who's been making waves. With the stage set, the announcer lays out the brutal rules of the tournament. The students are directed to the pit, and they are told that the moment their wristband lights up, they have the absolute freedom to challenge whoever they want. As the students gather at the arena pit, Novice knows he should be laying low after the forest ambush. But he realizes this tournament is a golden opportunity. It's a free pass to beat Jagdar to a pulp without facing any academy consequences, and our guy is more than ready to make the arrogant elite pay the price. The first match kicks off when the wristband of Bronk Driven lights up. Bronk is another elite clan descendant with overwhelming power, and he casually singles out a terrified, low-ranking student in the crowd as his first victim. The moment the bell rings, the poor kid throws absolutely everything he has at the elite. He unleashes a desperate flurry of strikes, landing solid hits and foolishly thinking he actually has a chance to win. But Bronk just yawns, casually asking if the kid is done tickling him. Before the student can even process the horror, Bronk retaliates with a single, devastating blast of purple energy that obliterates the boy's defenses and craters him into the arena floor. Bronk is instantly declared the winner as the crowd erupts, praising the terrifying might of the Driven bloodline. Watching the slaughter from the sidelines, the rest of the students realize a grim truth. The power gap between the elite direct descendants and everyone else is just an impossible mountain to climb. Novice watches the sheer, overwhelming power of a direct descendant on display. Seeing the brutal techniques used on his friends, Novice's eyes lock onto his arrogant rival. He makes a silent vow. When the time comes to finally crush Jagdar, he won't just beat him, he's going to make him feel every ounce of that same pain. Down in the arena, the brutal reality of the power gap is on full display. A red-haired student lunges in, only to be effortlessly slashed and tossed aside by a smirking elite with glasses. Standing over his bleeding opponent, the elite coldly tells him to stay down, making it clear that the lower-class students are completely outmatched. In the stands, a dark-haired vampire points out that none of the clan heads even bothered to show up for a bunch of first-years. As the elite in the arena continues to brutally beat his defenseless opponent, she reveals the dark truth behind this tournament. It isn't a competition, it's just a way for the direct descendants to flex their dominance and remind everyone else exactly where they belong in the food chain. But while the clan heads ignore the event, 2 hooded instructors monitor the fights through a crystal ball, their attention locked entirely on Novice. They can't believe a low-level vampire made it into the top 10, but then they spot an impossible anomaly in the system. Novice's blood power level hasn't just stayed stagnant, it's actually evolved from a level 2 to a level 3. It's something that has never happened before, prompting one of the instructors to head down to the Central Academy to see this anomaly in person. The hooded official is still unsettled by the strange energy readings. Deciding he needs to verify the anomaly himself, he heads for the Central Academy. But before leaving, he gives strict orders to delay Novice's match, ensuring our guy doesn't step into the arena until he returns. Meanwhile, the Academy tournament is in full swing. A purple-haired girl completely dominates her opponent, teleporting behind him with a cheeky greeting before blasting him with a colossal burst of crystal energy. She drops a mocking apology, then promises to keep beating him into the ground. Up in the stands, the crowd is shocked to see one of Novice's low-ranking friends hobbling up the stairs on a crutch, heavily bandaged from the recent assassin attack. Despite his severe injuries, he refused to stay in bed. He knows Novice is furious about what happened to them, and he dragged himself here to stop our hero from doing something stupid in the name of revenge. And the announcer calls for the main event. The number 1 ranked student, a terrifying prodigy named Zen. Zen steps into the arena against a massive, muscular opponent who swears he won't go down easy. But the moment the match begins, Zen attacks with such blinding speed that he blasts the huge guy backward without anyone even seeing him move, leaving the spectators completely stunned by the sheer gap in power. With most of the elite descendants having already finished their matches, the arena system prompts the next combatant to select an opponent. Novice steps up, his green eyes locked in a dead stare. He doesn't hesitate for a single second. Pointing straight into the crowd, our guy calls out his target, Jagdar, the arrogant elite from the Marquis clan. Behind the scenes, a cloaked examiner monitors the fights using a massive red crystal linked directly to the students' wristbands. Suspicious of Novice's insane speed from earlier, the overseer accesses his data, eager to uncover whatever secret the new kid is hiding. At the moment the system tries to scan Novice, the crystal glitches out in a sea of blaring red warnings. His health points and blood type show up as completely unreadable, and his race flags as a human vampire, an impossible anomaly. The examiner stares at the massive error screens in absolute shock, realizing the horrifying truth of what Novice really is. Knowing exactly what kind of monster they are dealing with, the examiner completely loses their mind. If Novice is allowed to fight, Jagdar is going to get slaughtered. Bursting into a dead sprint down the Grand Hall, the Overseer panics, desperate to stop the match before the clan's golden boy gets ripped to pieces. The entire tournament is actually a massive setup designed to flex the overwhelming power of the direct descendants, and challenging one of them is essentially a death sentence. Knowing this, Novice's masked ally sprints through the academy halls, desperate to stop the match before it changes the school's hierarchy forever. But as he reaches the arena, he realizes he's too late. Novice is already standing face to face with Jagdar, who arrogantly mocks our hero for thinking a decent assessment score means anything in a real fight. The elite warns him that stepping up to a direct descendant is straight-up suicide. Hovering nearby, Chip nervously asks if Novice actually has a strategy against someone this strong, but our guy admits he's just going to wing it because he really wants to kick the elite's teeth in. Up in the stands, Nomo and Styles watch the spectacle in utter disbelief. They know that anyone picking a fight with a Marquis descendant is either completely insane or totally clueless, and they can only pray that Jagdar decides to go easy on their friend. Meanwhile, up in the VIP box, the clan heads are highly amused that some foolish commoner dared to challenge their golden boy. The masked instructor panics, frantically trying to come up with an excuse to halt the fight, but another elite tells him to relax, assuming Jagdar wouldn't actually murder a student in front of an entire stadium. Referee calls for the match to begin, and Jagdar promises to show Novice a world of pain. In a blur of purple energy, the descendant vanishes and instantly closes the gap, unleashing a devastating mid-air strike that sends Novice crashing hard into the arena wall. Our hero manages to block at the absolute last second, but his system flashes a warning that he just lost a massive chunk of his health anyway. Novice grits his teeth, realizing just how absurdly strong a true descendant really is. Jagdar doesn't hold back, unleashing a relentless barrage of close-quarters strikes that drain Novice's health right through his blocks. Moving with blinding speed and crackling purple energy, the arrogant elite completely overwhelms our hero, sending him crashing to the ground. As Jagdar laughs and mocks Novice for being so cocky, their injured friend Styles watches in despair. Nursing a broken arm, Styles accepts the bitter reality that low-ranking vampires can never defeat a direct descendant, realizing the 10 clans will always get away with their cruelty. The rest of the elite crowd smirks, fully expecting Jagdar to drag out the execution. But Novice struggles to his feet, ignoring the blood dripping from his face, and asks the descendant one simple question: was he the one who put Nomo in that terrible state? Jagdar's sinister smile widens as he proudly admits he remembers the short brat perfectly. The truth of that day is finally revealed. Jagdar had cornered Nomo in a blind rage, violently demanding to know how a group of low ranks managed to pass the recent academy assessment. But power can never buy true loyalty. Instead of selling out his friends, Nomo took the brutal beating with a bloody smile, begging the descendant to torture him as much as he wanted, as long as he left Novice and Styles alone. But before our hero can secure his escape, Jagdar intercepts him with a brutal assault. The arrogant noble laughs maniacally, mocking Novice for taking a massive beating just to protect his friends, only for Jagdar to turn around and use them as punching bags anyway. Hearing that his sacrifice was for absolutely nothing, Novice goes dead silent. He grips his pendant tightly, taking a deep breath as the traumatic memories of his fallen allies flash through his mind, and swears he will never let another person close to him die. A terrifying, dark red aura completely engulfs our hero's body as his eyes glow with pure killing intent. Screaming Jagdar's name, Novice unleashes a suffocating wave of power that shatters the ground beneath him. Watching from the sidelines, the hooded intruders instantly panic, screaming to stop the fight before someone gets killed. When one of them points out that Novice seems to be losing anyway, the other shakes his head in absolute terror. He isn't worried about the student dying, he's terrified of what Novice is about to do to Jagdar. But the arrogant elite is too blind to realize the danger he's in. Shrugging off the massive spike in aura, Jagdar coats his fist in crackling purple lightning and dives straight at Novice, boasting that he's crushed hundreds of opponents who tried to look intimidating. The battle erupts and Novice knows he has to channel his inner rage while keeping his head perfectly cool if he wants to survive. He clashes head-on with Jagdar, their energies exploding across the battlefield as they trade brutal, lightning-fast blows. But the power gap is terrifying. Jagdar lands a devastating strike, and even though Novice blocks it perfectly, the sheer force shatters his defenses and drains his health. Jagdar just laughs, taunting our hero that his earlier display of power was nothing but a cheap bluff to make himself look tough. As Jagdar continues to mercilessly beat Novice down, the other elite students watch from the sidelines, completely unsurprised. To them, Jagdar is just playing with his food, because a regular vampire could never hope to bridge the massive gap in strength against a direct descendant of the 10 clans. But one of the elite observers points out a massive catch. Normally, descendants are untouchable because of their blood weapons, ancient clan-forged artifacts that absorb power with every passing generation. However, the Academy rules strictly ban blood weapons during this assessment, leveling the playing field just a fraction. Even unarmed, Jagdar is a monster, but his arrogant pride is his biggest weakness. The observer notes that a human never uses their full strength to squash an ant, but a single venomous bite can still bring a grown man to his knees. Because Jagdar is too embarrassed to go all out against a supposed nobody, he's going to underestimate Novice, giving our hero exactly one perfect window to strike back. As the massive blast of blue and red energy clears their path out of the catacombs, Novice finds his health dropping to a critical 62 points. Watching his reckless display of power, one of the hooded rebels questions if their tracking crystal made a mistake, praying they haven't underestimated the sheer threat he poses. But their escape is violently cut short when Jagdar, the arrogant Marquis clan elite, intercepts them, sneering that he's played around long enough and that Novice doesn't deserve a spot in the top 5. The arrogant noble instantly lunges forward with a deadly strike, forcing our hero to leap back and dodge the chaotic purple energy, knowing a single direct hit would be fatal. Jagdar unleashes a massive, swirling explosion of dark energy that completely engulfs the battlefield. As the smoke clears, a few sharp-eyed observers notice something strange about Novice's evasive movements, realizing they might be the only ones catching on to his true potential. Furious at being dodged, Jagdar curses him as an annoying bug and charges in with his sharp claws extended. He throws a relentless barrage of aura-infused punches, but Novice keeps his intense focus, analyzing every single movement his opponent makes. Pushed all the way back against the edge of the arena walls, Novice realizes Jagdar's aggressive charges are completely predictable, but his sheer speed makes close-range counterattacks impossible. Knowing a drawn-out battle is a guaranteed loss, our hero realizes he only has one winning move left, but his health is too low to actually use it. Meanwhile, far from the chaos, Novice's low-ranking Academy friends watch helplessly as he gets pushed to the brink. Seeing him battered and bruised, Nomo and a heavily bandaged Styles desperately wish there was anything they could do to help him take down this arrogant elite. Suddenly, Chip alerts Novice that a hidden system mechanic called Blood Bond has activated, miraculously siphoning health points directly from his bonded allies. As his health slowly ticks up past 70, Novice doesn't fully understand the skill, but as Jagdar screams and charges for the kill, our hero prepares to risk it all on one final strike. Pushing his body beyond its absolute limits, Novice sacrifices half of his maximum health to activate a devastating new skill called Blood Cannon. He vows to make Jagdar pay for everything he's done, letting the raw, chaotic energy consume him. A massive explosion of red energy and blue lightning erupts as Novice launches himself forward. The sheer force of his aura twists the surrounding air, tearing the ground apart as he charges. Knowing this is his only chance to win the match, our hero drives a colossal, tentacle-like spike of blood energy straight at the arrogant noble. He pours every ounce of his remaining strength into the strike, hoping to inflict as much agony as possible. Novice wants Jagdar to feel the exact same pain his friends were forced to endure. The resulting blast is absolutely catastrophic, sending shockwaves of blood and jagged energy tearing through the area and forcing terrified onlookers to run for their lives. The destructive wave is so massive that even the cloaked fighters are caught in the crossfire. They are thrown backward by the sheer magnitude of the explosion, desperately throwing up hexagonal energy shields to survive the onslaught. When the dust finally settles, Novice collapses to his knees, his health completely bottomed out at just a single hit point. As his hands tremble, a horrifying realization hits him. The Blood Bond skill didn't just pull power from thin air. Just as he once sacrificed his own health to heal Nomo and Styles, the system has now reversed the flow, draining his friend's life force to fuel his devastating attack. Novice realizes he only survived that massive blast by draining health through his bonds with his friends. Chip is absolutely panicking, warning Novice that his health has bottomed out at exactly 1 HP. Novice knows that if they were fighting outside the academy, a stiff breeze would literally kill him right now. Through the smoke, Jagdar is somehow still on his feet. The crowd can't believe the elite descendant tanked a direct hit from a blood cannon and lived to tell the tale. Knowing he has nothing left in the tank, Novice grits his teeth and prepares to forfeit the match. Jagdar glares with pure hatred, trying to force his broken body forward to finish the fight. But before he can even utter a word, his legs give out and he collapses face first into the dirt. The arena falls dead silent for a split second before the referee officially declares Novice the winner. The stadium absolutely erupts. The lower-ranking students lose their minds, screaming in pure hype as they watch a complete underdog humiliate a Marquis clan elite. But up in the VIP stands, the real heavy hitters aren't surprised at all. One of the elites notes that the match was decided the second their basic blood swipes canceled each other out. A blood swipe might be a fundamental vampire skill, but its power scales entirely off raw physical stats. The fact that Novice could match a descendant's speed and arm strength meant he was already playing in a completely different league. As the dust settles from the clash, the elites watching break down the mechanics of a true blood swipe. It takes precise mana control, refined technique, and most importantly, a vampire's innate blood strength. Soren knows better than anyone that the Academy's blood reading machines are basically a joke. The numbers only show base strength, and anyone competent can easily hide their true aura from a stupid piece of technology. But direct descendants like Jagdar are a different breed, naturally excelling in every single category. Even when they hold back, their attacks carry a devastating weight that regular vampires can't even dream of matching. That's exactly why the entire Academy is left in pure shock. Novice, a guy with zero refined technique and supposedly trash physical strength, just threw out a strike that perfectly matched Jagdar's power. The sheer force of their collision sends shockwaves through the arena, leaving the spectators completely speechless as the debris rains down. Up in the viewing stands, the hooded Academy elders are absolutely losing their minds. They can't comprehend how a kid with a pathetic level 2 blood reading just defied all logic and stood his ground against the elite bloodline. But as the panic sets in, one of the elders suddenly realizes their fatal mistake, tearing at his hair in absolute horror. The machine wasn't broken, and Novice was never a level 2, his true reading was actually a 12. When our hero first enrolled, his power was so overwhelmingly high that the system couldn't even display it properly. And when they all laughed at him for finally leveling up to a 3, he was actually sitting at a monstrous 13. While Novice focuses on his grueling training with the rebellion, the fallout from his recent clash is still sending shockwaves through the Academy. The students simply can't believe he actually pulled off a win against an arrogant elite like Jagdar, and everyone is losing their minds over that devastating blood cannon he unleashed. Up in the stands, the elite spectators start putting the pieces together. They whisper among themselves, wondering if our guy is some illegitimate child or a secret weapon raised in the shadows by a lesser family to overthrow the hierarchy. But the reality of vampire politics is far more cutthroat. They realize that if Novice doesn't belong to a major clan, every single faction will try to recruit him, and if he turns them down, they'll immediately mark him for death just to eliminate the threat. Watching from the sidelines, the elite vampire Soren is absolutely panicking. She specifically warned him not to stand out, knowing that if the ruling clans discover he's actually a human turned into a vampire, an entirely different, far deadlier group will hunt him down. Her friend casually suggests that she should just recruit Novice into her own father's clan to keep him safe. The idea leaves Soren completely stunned, realizing just how complicated things are about to get. Meanwhile, our hero is busy reaping the rewards of his impossible victory. The system chimes in, confirming he's pushed past his limits to hit level 16, boosting his endurance to 20 and handing him 5 fresh stat points. Since he chose to spare Jagdar's life, Novice wasn't even sure the system would pay out. Now he's left scratching his head, trying to figure out the best way to invest those points to match his unique hybrid class. Suddenly, his mutated system companion, Chip, pops out and completely loses his mind over how close that fight really was. Chip points out that Novice survived on exactly 1 HP, joking that a simple celebratory slap would have killed them both, which just earns a tired chuckle from our guy. Back in the medical ward, Novice chills on his bed while Chip inspects their IV drip. Luckily, the staff knows exactly what a vampire needs to recover, and after downing a fresh bag of A-positive blood, our hero's health maxes out to 160 and his blood efficiency levels up. Knock at the door interrupts the peace and Styles hobbles in on crutches. Since broken bones take a lot longer to heal than an empty HP bar, he's still banged up, but he's in high spirits. When he asks how our guy is holding up, Novice admits he's never felt better, prompting Styles to laugh and say that if he had just humiliated a direct descendant like Jagdar, he'd be rubbing it in everyone's faces. The mood shifts as Styles warns that Jagdar and his elite clan definitely won't let this slide. Sometimes making a name for yourself is the worst thing you can do. Novice sweats, realizing that Soren explicitly told him to lay low, and he just did the exact opposite by making himself the center of attention. Still, Styles sincerely thanks Novice for giving Jagdar the beatdown he wanted to deliver himself, before mentioning that Nomo just woke up down the hall. Head over to check on their pink-haired friend, who's looking rough but alive. Nomo immediately congratulates Novice on the victory, revealing that the hospital staff hasn't stopped gossiping about it, meaning the entire island will know his name by tomorrow. Novice tries to stay humble, claiming he couldn't have one without their help, but Nomo just laughs and tells him to cut the corny crap since they got completely wiped out. Novice visits his battered friends Nomo and Styles in the infirmary. He admits he wouldn't have survived the clash if they hadn't given him the push he needed to fire off his massive blood cannon. They brush off the corny sentiment, but they can't deny the results. Taking down an arrogant elite like Jagdar, fluke or not, proves Novice is on another level. Amazed, they demand to know his secret. The Novice flips the script, asking for their advice instead. He confesses that while his blood attacks hit hard, his physical strikes felt practically useless and he suspects his class is to blame. Nomo and Styles assume he picked the standard physical-type vampire route, but Novice casually drops a bombshell. He's a blood manipulator. The revelation leaves his friends utterly speechless. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, a sinister man with glasses monitors the facility through floating surveillance rings. Watching the chaos unfold, he smiles, finding our hero's unique situation incredibly interesting. Back in the infirmary, Novice sees their horrified reactions, and glancing at Chip, he instantly regrets blindly trusting his mutated companion's class recommendation. Styles doesn't sugarcoat it. Blood manipulator is universally considered garbage. It drains massive amounts of blood for pitiful damage, leaving the user physically frail, and because none of the clan heads use it, there are zero mentors to learn from. Anyone foolish enough to pick it ends up permanently ruining their body's potential, trapped on a dead-end path. Recovering from the recent chaos, Nomo and Styles admit that anyone who chooses the blood manipulator class usually ends up dead last, making it a path most vampires avoid entirely. The Novice realizes that his system is the ultimate cheat code. Unlike other vampires who blindly drain their own health to use blood magic, he can track his exact stats, knowing precisely when to push his limits and when to hold back. And since he used to be a frontline paladin, his brutal physical combat skills perfectly cover the class's natural weaknesses. Nomo reassures him that after publicly crushing Jagdar, no one will dare call him weak, but advises him to keep his class a secret so people don't think he's just begging for attention. Novice rubs his temples with a heavy sigh, agreeing that he already has way too big of a target on his back. Meanwhile, the consequences of that fight are playing out in a lavish recovery room where a heavily bandaged Jagdar receives an unexpected visitor. His fiancée steps through the heavy doors and the humiliated elite gnashes his teeth, violently coughing as he demands to know why she's here. She doesn't offer any sympathy, coldly reminding him that her father expects her to marry the absolute strongest vampire in the academy. Staring down at his broken body, she asks how he can claim that title after losing to a complete nobody, and brutally calls off their engagement, leaving Jagdar trembling in pure, unadulterated rage. The fallout of Novice's overwhelming victory hits the elites hard. A high-ranking vampire woman visits her fiancé's hospital room with cold news. Once her father hears of his humiliating defeat, their wedding is officially off. She cuts all ties, telling him they have absolutely no reason to ever see each other again, and walks out. Left alone in his bandages, the arrogant elite Jagdar completely loses his mind. Humiliated by his ex-fiancé's look of disgust, he erupts in a violent rage, shattering his medical equipment with a burst of dark energy. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he curses Novice's name, swearing to brutally murder the former paladin even if it's the last thing he ever does. Meanwhile, the emergency summit of the clan heads is already underway. The vampire leaders gather in a dimly lit hall, analyzing footage of Novice through a glowing crystal orb. When one asked which clan this anomaly belongs to, the terrifying truth drops: he doesn't belong to any of them. The head of the Marquis clan snaps, slamming his fists down and accusing his rivals of secretly training a descendant just to humiliate his bloodline. But his tantrum is instantly shut down by the commanding presence of more obsidian. A powerful clan head orders him to sit down and stop embarrassing them all. Realizing the massive threat Novice poses, More commands every clan to immediately mobilize their intelligence networks. For the first time in history, a vampire outside the royal bloodlines of the 10 clans possesses overwhelming power, and they need answers before he tears their entire society apart. As Novice prepares his strike team, the clan summit is already underway. The elites gather in their grand hall to investigate the anomaly threatening their power, but they're interrupted by a mysterious masked figure. The intruder pulls down his mask, flashing a sinister, razor-sharp grin as he welcomes the confrontation. The next day, back at the academy grounds, Nomo and Styles have finally fully healed from their injuries. The two are thrilled to be back on their feet and head outside to stretch their legs, feeling stronger than ever. As they walk the campus, Chip nervously points out that all the students from the assessment are still here, meaning the arrogant elite, Jagdar, might be lurking around. Nomo doubts Jagdar would be foolish enough to cause a scene in front of everyone after his recent humiliation. Forgetting to speak in his mind, Novice accidentally replies to his system companion out loud, earning a confused look from Nomo. Nomo quickly brushes it off and assures him that they don't need to worry about Jagdar. He explains that while regular students are stuck on campus until the opening ceremony, direct descendants like Jagdar use their elite privileges to return to their clans early. Styles angrily clenches his fist at the blatant favoritism, while Novice silently admits he wouldn't even know how to handle Jagdar right now, as he's still completely clueless about being a vampire. Suddenly, a group of female students spots Novice and starts excitedly cheering for him, leaving our hero completely bewildered. Styles chuckles, pointing out that since Novice publicly defeated a direct descendant, he's officially the new star of the academy. Novice's victory over a direct descendant brings him intense attention, but not all of it is welcome. A female vampire approaches him, batting her eyelashes and trying to flirt her way into his good graces now that he's a proven powerhouse. But before she can even make her move, Novice's friends Nomo and Styles step in, calling out her shameless desperation. Furious at being rejected, the woman lashes out, smacking Nomo and snapping that he and Styles are just weaklings clinging to Novice's coattails. She laughs menacingly, arguing that unlike them, she would actually be useful to a rising star. But Novice isn't having it. He steps forward, his eyes glowing blood red, and unleashes a colossal, shadowy aura that towers over her like a demon. He coldly tells her that he relies on his friends just as much as they rely on him, warning her never to insult them again. Terrified by the sheer suffocating pressure of his aura, the woman begs for her life and scurries away into the forest. Chip, Novice's mutated system companion, pops out and laughs it off, joking that she was just too scared to mess with their crew. Grateful for the backup, Nomo declares this the start of a beautiful friendship, but his tone quickly turns serious. He warns our hero not to let his recent victory over Jagdar get to his head, dropping a chilling truth: if Novice had fought the direct descendant out in the real world, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Novice is genuinely confused, admitting he got lucky but believing their power levels were relatively close. Shaking his head, Nomo explains that the elite bloodlines are playing an entirely different game, possessing two massive advantages that low-ranking vampires like them completely lack. But as Novice locks eyes with the clan head, his mind flashes back to a crucial warning Nomo gave him back at the academy. Nomo had revealed the first massive advantage these elite vampires hold: blood weapons. These ancient glowing relics are passed down from leader to leader, possessing raw power that dwarfs anything ordinary students can forge, making Novice realize exactly what kind of firepower he's up against. Nomo had also warned him about their second ultimate advantage: unique clan skills. While normal students desperately attend the academy hoping to be scouted just to learn these exclusive techniques, direct descendants are practically born with them. Nomo broke it down, explaining that the Varketh clan can morph their limbs into deadly weapons, while Jagdar's Marquis clan can transform into swarms of bats. Back in the memory, Nomo pointed out that Novice was guaranteed to get a flood of recruitment offers after his recent stunts, though our hero stubbornly insisted he'd rather stay entirely independent. But before they could finish the conversation, heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed through the hall, and Nomo completely froze in sheer panic. Newcomer was Zen, the undisputed rank 1 student of the entire academy. Staring Novice down with glowing red eyes, Zen didn't mince words, flat out challenging our hero to a direct duel. The surrounding crowd erupted into shocked whispers, completely baffled as to why the top dog was gunning for a rookie, while Nomo just sighed, realizing Novice is an absolute magnet for trouble. As this spectacular clash of opposing energies fills the room, Nomo and Styles can barely believe what they're hearing. They've already warned Novice that direct descendants like Zen are practically untouchable little princes who command their own private armies, making them incredibly dangerous enemies. Styles nervously suggests Novice should just accept the fight while Chip, his mutated system companion, flutters nearby. Zen makes his intentions crystal clear. He wants an unofficial brawl outside the standard academy assessments so he can unleash his full, devastating power. Novice is skeptical, pointing out that unsanctioned fights are strictly forbidden on campus. But Zen just brushes it off, declaring that the rules simply don't apply to him, and promises to hold the duel in a hidden location away from prying eyes. To sweeten the deal, Zen offers a high-grade blood potion to fully restore Novice after the battle. Realizing the rank 1 student isn't actually trying to assassinate him, Novice demands to know why Zen wants this fight in the first place. Zen admits that as the undisputed number 1, he's genuinely curious about Novice's explosive rise through the first-year ranks. He wants to test our hero's limits and establish the pecking order once and for all. Novice knows a spar with the strongest student is a massive risk, but it's also the perfect way to gauge his own growing power. Still, he isn't about to give away his time for free, boldly asking Zen what's in it for him. Zen is completely caught off guard by the audacity. Usually, students and even fully grown adults beg for a chance to spar with him, showering him with rare gifts and treasures just for the privilege of his time. But Novice is a former veteran adventurer and he knows exactly how to play the game. Acting reluctant, he tells Zen that since he didn't ask for this fight, he expects a hefty reward for his trouble. Novice lays out his steep demands. He wants 5 premium blood potions, and each one must be sourced from a completely different person. With Chip giving a cheeky thumbs up, Novice warns Zen not to cheat because his companion will instantly detect any fakes. Instead of getting angry at the disrespect, Zen's intense red eyes light up with amusement. Flashing a sinister grin, he tells Novice to follow him, leading our hero straight toward their secret battlefield. Miles away from the chaos of the summit raid, Novice's academy friends, Nomo and Styles, nervously pace outside their quarters, praying their rogue friend actually survives his insane infiltration mission. They haven't heard any bad news yet, but in their brutal world, silence is rarely a comforting thing. Meanwhile, deep within the fortress grounds, Novice finds his path completely blocked. Taking in the massive, heavily guarded architecture, he realizes just how right his friends were about the insane privileges granted to the elite direct descendants. His thoughts are abruptly cut short when Jagdar, the arrogant elite descendant of the Marquis clan, plummets from the sky with a deafening crash. Landing in a swirling vortex of blood magic, the elite vampire locks eyes with our hero, radiating pure, murderous intent. But instead of instantly going for the kill, Jagdar channels his dark red energy and hurls a heavy bundle of white cloth straight at Novice's feet. The fabric unfurls upon impact, revealing Novice's own glowing twin swords. Jagdar casually confesses that he broke into Novice's quarters to retrieve them, completely flipping the script. He scoffs that while their previous academy assessment banned weapons, this is a real fight to the death, and he wants our hero at his absolute maximum power so there are zero excuses when he loses. Novice doesn't waste a second, kneeling down to grip the familiar hilts as their blue energy surges to life in his hands. With his weapons finally back, a spark of hope ignites in him that he might actually win this, just as Jagdar summons a massive wave of purple energy and demands to know if he's ready. As the dust settles from the summit raid, Novice finds himself face-to-face with Soren, the Academy's #1 ranked elite. Knowing he has to watch out for Soren's blood weapon and unique clan trait, Novice doesn't hold back, using his sword to unleash a flurry of rapid crimson blood swipes. But Soren effortlessly deflects the barrage. Novice just smirks, fully aware that taking down the top student was never going to be that easy. Soren erupts into motion, dashing forward with an explosive aura that reminds Novice of the terrifying monsters he fought back in the cave. Clashing blades in a storm of dust, Soren taunts our hero, asking if that's really all the power he has. The two lock in a brutal melee, but Novice quickly realizes a massive problem. His blade isn't cutting through. Soren is completely coating his body in a dense blood aura, and the raw force of his attacks is so overwhelming that even when Novice successfully blocks, the impact still chips away at his health, draining his HP with every single strike. The battle between Novice and Obsidian rages on, moving at blinding speeds until a heavy clash sends Novice's sword flying from his grip. Obsidian smirks, mocking our hero and asking what he plans to do unarmed. But Novice isn't out of options. Knowing he can't afford to lose this fight, he dumps all his available stat points directly into his strength, pushing it all the way up to 35 as his hands mutate into razor-sharp blood claws. Obsidian just grins, amused by the flashy transformation. Novice lunges, unleashing a massive wave of red energy. He knows the blast won't actually hit the clan head, but it creates the perfect smokescreen for him to dash in and snatch his sword right back off the ground. He instantly pivots into a relentless flurry of glowing strikes, but to his absolute shock, Obsidian effortlessly dodges every single one. The clan head is actually starting to enjoy himself, finally seeing the spark he expected from the rogue vampire. The two clash again in a blinding explosion of red and purple energy, with Novice desperately aiming for his opponent's blind spots, only to find an impenetrable defense waiting for him at every turn. Declaring that our hero's best simply isn't good enough, Obsidian slams his blade into the earth, triggering a catastrophic eruption of shadow and fire. Novice barely manages to weave through the fiery phantom beasts and lands a desperate counterattack, but the sheer force of the collision still rips away 67 of his health points in a single devastating blow. Novice lands a devastating blow, sending his opponent crashing into the dirt and securing another brutal victory. As the dust settles, Chip playfully mocks our hero, pointing out that he didn't even need his blood weapon. Pure skill was enough to completely outclass the guy. But the celebration is cut short when an elite vampire named Soren steps into the fray, casually tossing Novice a high-grade blood potion. Soren tells Novice to drink up and hit him with the exact same attack he used to defeat Jagdar. Novice immediately realizes Soren is baiting him into using his massive blood cannon, a move that drains way too much HP for his current battered state. But with the free potion in hand and his pride on the line, our guy decides to flip the script. He downs the vial, letting the pure energy surge through his veins as his eyes widen with absolute madness. Soren calmly stands his ground, reminding Novice that he asked for this challenge. Gathering every ounce of his newly restored power, Novice channels a terrifying mix of red and blue lightning, forming a massive orb of destructive energy. Pushing his limits, he unleashes the blood cannon, sending a colossal, blinding beam of pure force tearing straight through the battlefield toward the elite vampire. Instead of dodging, Soren simply ignites his fist with roaring flames and punches the oncoming energy beam head-on. The collision triggers a massive, earth-shattering explosion that sends shockwaves and debris flying in every direction. When the smoke finally clears, Novice is left completely speechless. Soren is standing there without a single scratch on him, effortlessly brushing off an attack that could have obliterated an entire guild. Soren looks down at our hero, bluntly stating that this is the real gap in their power and warning him not to let a few lucky wins inflate his ego. Tossing Novice 2 more vials to honor their agreement, the elite vampire reveals a grim truth. The entire Marquis clan is now hunting him. Admitting he doesn't want Novice to die before reaching his true potential, Soren leaves him with a chilling ultimatum, giving him 2 options to survive the coming bloodbath. Walking through the bloody aftermath, Novice realizes he only has two options in this brutal world: find someone strong enough to protect him or become the absolute strongest himself. Thinking back on the sheer power of the #1 ranked student, the cave vampire Sauron and Zen, he knows this island is crawling with monsters who could crush him in a heartbeat. Chip flat out tells him he needs to level up, and Novice already knows the fastest shortcut. Pulling out the vials of red liquid he secured, he realizes he doesn't even need to chug the whole thing to see results. Consuming just a single drop of O-type blood hits his system immediately, instantly boosting his blood aura strength. He hates thinking about where the Academy is harvesting all this human blood, but right now, his own survival has to come before morality. The magical vials somehow preserve the blood perfectly, meaning if he can just figure out their supply chain, he won't have to constantly fight off his rabid bloodlust. System breaks down the insane benefits based on blood type. O boosts aura strength, increases efficiency, B builds sun resistance, and Ob permanently lowers his hunger. Having Chip store the rest of the stash in his inventory, Novice realizes that while blood is his ultimate cheat code, as long as he's trapped on this island, he's still just a pawn playing by their rules. Novice regroups with Nomo and Styles in the Grand Hall, realizing that surviving this system one day at a time is going to be brutal. His friends admit they were worried sick when the elite vampire Zen returned without him, joking that they were ready to start a revenge arc until they remembered how terrifying Zen actually is. Looking around at his carefree classmates, Novice realizes a hard truth about his new reality. These vampires aren't just mindless monsters. Just like humans, there are good ones and bad ones. The trio shares a laugh and hurries back to the safety of their dorm room. Once inside, they keep their voices down to avoid eavesdroppers, wishing they had a spellcaster to secure the room. Nomo asks about the fight, and Novice just collapses onto his bed in exhaustion, admitting that Zen completely wiped the floor with him without even drawing his blood weapon. It leaves our hero wondering how long it will take to reach that kind of monstrous power. Later that night, while his friends snore away, Novice stares at the ceiling in deep thought. His life has drastically changed since his days as a paladin, but he realizes he's still subconsciously clinging to their righteous code. If he truly wants to survive this island and avenge his fallen comrades, he has to let the old rules die. The worst monsters are never defeated by playing fair. His mind drifts back to a training session during his time in the Order, sparring against a veteran paladin. The bearded old man effortlessly blocked every one of Novice's strikes with his winged hammer shield, proudly declaring that he earned his rank for a reason. Even back then, his mentor recognized that there was something completely different about our hero. Hearing the captain's twisted revelation, Novice's mind flashes back to his human roots. Even as a paladin, he was an oddity. While his peers hid behind heavy shields, Novice used his holy skills purely for defense so he could pour all his energy into relentless, shieldless offense. The memory shifts to his first days at the Vampire Academy. Waking up in his dorm, his thoughts drifted to his old adventurer ally, Park. They had joined the Holy Order together, and Novice couldn't help but wonder how his friend would react if he knew he had become the very monster they swore to destroy. His brooding was abruptly cut short by a loud knock. His low-ranking friends, Nomo and Styles, burst into the room, buzzing with excitement for the Academy's official opening ceremony. They told Novice not to sweat any retaliation from Jagdar, since all the clan heads would be present to keep the arrogant elite in check. Arriving at the grand arena, the trio immediately noticed the whispers echoing through the crowd. Word had already spread that a nobody student had humiliated a direct descendant during the assessment, and the entire student body was dying to see the rumor confirmed with their own eyes. High up in the vampire hierarchy, rumors are already swirling. One elite vampire teases her friend, noting that she's been practically glowing ever since she broke off her engagement with the arrogant Jagdar. But she suspects the real reason for her good mood is a forbidden romance, hinting that she might have fallen in love with a human back on the mainland. Meanwhile, down in the Academy's Grand Hall, the first-year students are gathering for their opening ceremony. Nomo marvels at how fast the vampires rebuilt the arena, wondering out loud if the elusive Vampire King will actually show his face. But he quickly brushes the thought off, joking that the king only talks to high-ranking clan members, so if a lowly student ever meets him, it means they're probably about to be executed. Novice sits quietly beside him, his mind racing with a singular goal. He knows the Vampire King is somewhere in this academy, and he might be the only being alive who knows how to cure his vampiric infection. But our hero is also haunted by the bigger mystery of why this academy even exists, and what terrifying secret his fallen friend Claire discovered that made her terrified of this place. Before he can connect the dots, a booming voice echoes through the courtyard. Slano, the head of the first-year students, takes the stage to welcome the fresh meat. With a sinister smirk, he warns the crowd that today is their last day of peace before they are thrown headfirst into the brutal, unforgiving meat grinder of academy life. As panic ripples through the lower ranks, Slano raises the stakes. He reminds them that the only way to truly survive and graduate is to prove their worth and get drafted into one of the 10 major clans. And to show them exactly what true power looks like, he begins introducing the legendary clan heads one by one, starting with the terrifying Moor Obsidian. Watching more obsidian from the stands, Nomo and Styles realize that if his son Zen was a monster, the clan head himself must be on a completely different level. Novice stares at the terrifying vampire, wondering if even a mainland S-rank adventurer could survive a fight against a being like this. As Soren takes the mic to introduce the next leader, more obsidian suddenly turns his head and locks eyes directly with our hero. Instantly, Chip's system floods with critical danger warnings. A lethal, invisible aura slams into Novice, crushing his throat and plummeting his stats. He screams as the sheer pressure of the clan head's gaze suffocates him. Nomo panics, but Styles quickly realizes what's happening. Moore is taking revenge on Novice for humiliating his elite descendant Jagdar. Just before Novice blacks out, a voice cuts through the tension, suggesting the boy has been punished enough. The pressure vanishes, leaving Novice gasping for air and terrified that Moore nearly killed him from across the arena without even lifting a finger. Soren clears his throat and introduces the next clan head, Kern Tzuren. But the moment Novice gets a look at the new leader, his blood runs cold. Kern flashes a sinister grin and Novice's shock instantly boils over into pure, screaming fury. High above the grassy arena floor, the 5 clan heads sit in their thrones, looking down at the crowd like gods watching insects. As Novice stares at the stage, his heart stops. The clan head standing before the academy is the exact same monster who slaughtered his adventurer friends and turned him into a vampire in the Chlorif caves. Pure rage boils over, causing Novice's blood aura to violently flare out of control. His academy friend, Nomo, notices the chaotic energy and asks if he's okay, forcing Novice to take a deep breath and rein in his killing intent. Novice knows the bitter truth: if his peak Paladin powers couldn't scratch this guy back then, his current strength won't stand a chance. Chip advises him to lay low since the clan heads rarely interact with students, but Novice makes a silent vow that he isn't leaving this academy without that monster's head. The announcer continues the introductions, bringing up Gemma Velmora and the terrifying Cryptor Sanguil. Down in the crowd, the arrogant Jagdar sweats under the suffocating pressure, completely baffled when Cryptor's daughter casually mentions that her father is actually in a great mood. The announcer explains that the remaining clan heads are busy with important tasks, wrapping up the grand introductions. As the students settle into their seats, whispers ripple through the crowd, wondering what brutal test the academy has planned for their opening ceremony. Back at the academy, the students are buzzing with excitement as the opening ceremony finally kicks off. The announcer takes center stage to hype up the crowd, handing the floor over to one of the clan heads, a man named Kern, to deliver an inspiring speech. But up in the stands, Novice is practically shaking with rage, his fists clenched so hard they glow with energy. His friends Nomo and Styles are completely lost. They thought Novice was only worried about the Marquis clan after humiliating Jagdar, so they have no idea why he's glaring daggers at this clan head. Down in the arena, Kern eats up the applause and smirks, declaring that this year's class is the strongest the academy has ever seen. But his tone quickly shifts into a threat as he warns that anyone who falls behind will be mercilessly discarded, even the direct descendants. Over in the VIP seating, Jagdar practically foams at the mouth, knowing that jab was aimed right at him for losing a fight to a commoner. But Kern isn't finished stirring the pot. With a sinister grin, he raises his hand and fires a thin beam of red energy straight into the crowd, using it like a spotlight to single out the most interesting student of all. The entire arena erupts in whispers as the beam lands right on Novice, with the other students instantly recognizing him as the rumored rookie who actually defeated Jagdar. Staring right into Novice's eyes, Kern gives a twisted smile and announces that Novice's incredible strength is exactly what he expected. Then he drops a bombshell that leaves Nomo and Styles completely paralyzed. Kern reveals that he was the one who originally turned Novice into a vampire. As he stands on the academy grounds, a chilling realization hits our hero. He remembers the warnings that if the elite purebloods discover he's a turned vampire, he won't just be an outcast, his life will become a living hell. Clenching his fists, Novice wonders if forcing him into this deadly academy was his enemy's master plan from the very beginning. Meanwhile, deep in a moonlit forest far from the academy, Park collapses in exhaustion after a brutal fight. An armored human commander approaches, praising the young adventurer for holding his ground against the ambush. Catching his breath, Park stares at the strange, red-cloaked corpses littering the misty forest floor and asks what they just fought. The commander's expression turns grim as he finally puts a name to their new nightmare, revealing that these monsters are known as vampires. But the humans aren't alone in the woods. High up in the dense canopy, a trio of cloaked assassins watches their every move, and one of the scouts readies his blade, asking if they should strike while the adventurers are weak. Their leader immediately shuts the idea down. He points out that the adventurers are busy killing the very same monsters they're hunting, noting that the enemy of their enemy is a friend they desperately need right now. Before the assassins can retreat, the forest erupts into chaos. A sinister man suddenly lunges from the shadows, accompanied by a massive, glowing wolf beast that steps out of the blue light, ready to tear everything in its path to shreds.